Time to talk sports. Hey, I'm Cleveland Tigers. My amazing tonight. Woo! Woo!
You good over there, buddy? Wound up tighter than a $2 watch this morning.
I was giving out a stream exclusive.
Fair enough.
That's what that's what we do. I'm a giver. I like to give. And if you follow us on Twitch and Twitter and YouTube and Facebook, you get some of that. Yeah.
Would you, if you're not do it now, go to facebook.com/thefanupstate, twitter.com/thefanupstate, or search and subscribe to The Rob Brown Show on Twitch or YouTube. By the way, Lonzo won't be there because he is going to be busy hosting his own show, The Upstate Pulse, which airs from 7 to 9 on Saturday evenings on our sister station, 106.3 WORD. It is a fabulous nerd show. And if you have not joined in on the phenomenon that is sweeping the nation, that is the Upstate Pulse, this Saturday will be a fabulous opportunity to do it.
By the way, real quick, starting year 8. So, I mean,
year 8,
yes,
ladies and gentlemen. It is not sweeping the nation. It has swept the nation and continues to
We've done been around twice.
A hot minute. All right. So make sure you check that out. Also, make sure you tune into that show on February 4th, because not only will I be sitting in on the show that day, but we'll be playing a little D&D on our live stream after it is over as well. So you want to make sure you tune into that. But before we get there, this Saturday evening, ladies and gentlemen, this Saturday evening is the WWE Royal Rumble. It is my favorite pay-per-view of the year. And I am going to do something that I have never done before, Lonzo. While this is happening, am going to host a watch-along. I'm going to go live on a stream Saturday night, just during the Royal Rumble match, not the whole pay-per-view, but just during the Royal Rumble match on Saturday. I am going to go live for a watch-along. And during that live watch-along, not only will we be commenting on the match itself, but I will be inviting you guys to comment, to participate. Some of you may even be allowed to jump on the stream with me for a few minutes at a time. But I'm going to do a live watch-along Saturday during the Royal Rumble match. So if you want to be a part of that, follow The Rob Brown Show on YouTube or on Twitch, as we'll be broadcasting it live to those locations.
And hey, don't spoil me, okay?
Well, you won't be watching.
No. I'm not talking to you. I'm talking to them, okay? Because you've been present when we've been spoiled before. It was an MJF thing when he won the title. Don't spoil me. I know you think it's funny, but I
have never intentionally spoiled you.
No. I'm not talking about you. We were on the air on the Upstate Pulse, and we got spoiled.
I can't help you with that.
Yeah. So I'm asking the listeners, don't spoil me, okay? So I mean, it comes on at 8. I got 1 hour left of the show. I'm gonna go home and watch. Don't spoil me. I don't want to know. It's not funny. It's not. So don't do that.
Asking trolls not to troll. Good luck with that. Bold strategy, Kat. Let's see if it works out.
I am asking my good friends, the listeners, to be kind.
Oh, so you do have friends.
Yeah, it's just they like and subscribe, and that's how friendship works, right?
All right, ladies and gentlemen, a lot of stuff to get to on the radio broadcast today. We will, now that we've got a few days in the back pocket, we will take a rear view mirror look at the NFC and AFC divisional round discussions. We'll get into those coming up very soon. We have got to utilize those to take a look at this weekend's AFC and NFC championship games. We'll go ahead and lock in our early prognostications on those cards, subject to change. We got a few more things that I need to get into. The University of Tennessee has locked in Josh Heupel with a long-term, massive contract extension. He is now locked in as the head coach for the Tennessee Volunteers through 2029. Of course, that doesn't mean he'll be there the whole time, but that's when his contract is set to run out with the University of Tennessee. What can we take away from Tennessee being willing to throw the bag and give a hell of a lot of years to Josh Heupel to continue to wear that bright orange.
How much did South Carolina beat Tennessee by? I mean, usually when South Carolina does that, a coach is gone. So, I mean, way to weather that storm, Heupel.
Many points did the Gamecocks win by. Many points. Now, that being said, Lonzo just kind of accidentally hit on something that I am going to talk about, which is we have now got Cam Pringle locked into the University of South Carolina. He was the number one offensive lineman in the state of South Carolina. That's a big-time recruiting battle won by the Gamecocks. We've now added a 4-star tight end out of Georgia who had offers from all the big schools, Ohio State, Georgia, Clemson, Bama. They all offered this kid out of Georgia. And where is he going to play football? Columbia, South Carolina, alongside Cam Pringle in that 2024 class that will join up next year. That's a big get as well. There is also one more offensive line recruit out of the state of South Carolina in the 2024 class who is being highly recruited, and he has publicly narrowed down his final schools to 2, Clemson and South Carolina. Now, depending on how much you read into the recruiting services, most of them have him selecting Clemson. But when told that, and being asked by some media members the other day, he reiterated that he very much enjoyed his time at Columbia. In fact, he has now scheduled another visit to Columbia to spend time with the Gamecocks coaching staff. And I think it's fair to ask the question, did the signing of Cam Pringle perhaps influence him just a little bit to give the Cola a second look? Now, 2 thoughts on that. And then we're going to get a little bit deeper into that story later on in the show. Number one, I've told you a couple of times that there is a process, there is a checklist that I look at with college football coaches that, and I'm not just talking new, I'm talking all college football coaches from Nick Saban on down to Deion Sanders. Step 1 is, have you created a culture and environment and atmosphere around your program that fans and players are outspoken about, right? Have you created a culture, a foundation at your school that your fans want to brag about, that your players outwardly and repeatedly talk about, and that recruits to your school feel like is unique, is special, is different? Step number 2 is, are you winning the games that you're supposed to win as a head coach? I am not talking about getting a couple of big wins over big programs to prove you've arrived. I've talked about step number 2, or check box number 2. Are you winning the games that you're supposed to win? Step number 3 is, are you winning recruiting battles in your own backyard? And I'm not talking about grabbing the 2 stars you want. I'm saying the 3, the 4-star guys that you're looking for. Are you winning the recruiting battle in your own backyard? Recruiting is an international game now. You have kids coming from quite literally around the world to play football at the collegiate level in the great United States of America. And it certainly is a national game at this point. So the next question becomes, are you successfully able to out-recruit in your backyard? I'm talking about your city, the communities that are considered part of your region. Are you able to win recruiting battles for the best talent out of that area? And if you've done that, we go to step 4. That is, begin winning games you're not supposed to win. And if you are winning games you're not supposed to win, then you go to step 5, which is, can you win the recruiting battles that are national, that are not regional? Can you start going into other people's backyards and winning recruiting battles? And if you've hit those 5 things, you're probably a successful head coach. Guys like Ryan Day, guys like Nick Saban, guys like Dabo Swinney, they have done that. Most of them continue to do it. But it is when you start seeing the check mark erased from one of those boxes that the downfall of a top-tier head coach can be prognosticated with some level of accuracy. Grabbing this tight end out of Georgia would tick a box for Shane Beamer that he has not ticked yet. That is to say, going into the backyard of another workhorse program, and not just Georgia, by grabbing a 4-star tight end out of Georgia, but this kid sits in between Georgia and Alabama and Auburn and both Mississippi schools and Clemson and LSU and Florida, most of whom made offers to the kid and grabbed him anyway. That would be an emphatic check in the box of, can you win recruiting battles outside of your backyard?
See, and the thing is, because I've been here a really long time, half my life, and I remember when Carolina was starting to win those recruiting battles. When you got Marcus Lattimore, when you got J.D. Clowney, when you started getting guys from all over the country to come to South Carolina, this is not out of the ordinary. This should be the norm and was for a while, and then it went away. I'm glad it's starting to come back. And you're right. This is a great sign for South Carolina and what Shane Beamer is doing with this program going forward.
So I think those
and tight ends out of Carolina are usually pretty good. Did you see what Hayden Hurst did the other day?
Oh,
I don't know if you saw that.
A quiet stud.
I couch called that, by the way. Throw it to Hayden Hurst and then touchdown. You know, I impressed my wife, so it's hard to do.
Stud.
It's hard to do.
I think winning the recruiting battles is, and by the way, this checklist of 5 items for me, this checklist of 5 items is not something that once you check all 5, you're just good forever. This is a checklist of 5 items that must continuously be happening. You must be continuously checking off every single year these 5 items. If you're able to check off 3 of them, you're probably okay. If you're able to check off 4 of them, you're good. If you're able to check off all 5 of them routinely, then you're probably a playoff contender, right? Shane just checked off another box. We'll talk about that. And we'll talk about the reaction from Clemson fans who have been responding to me on this. Rob, why aren't you talking about Clemson's recruiting? Well, a couple things. Number 1, you guys are getting the guys you're expecting to get. And number 2, as we have mentioned in the past, it is the parable of the prodigal son, right? You all remember your Sunday school? The parable of the prodigal son. One son stays home. He does all the things he's supposed to do. He puts in the work. He does the grind. It's day-to-day operations. The other son leaves to go find himself, right? And he's gone for however long he's gone. And then when he comes back, the prodigal son returns. What does Pops do in the story? Throws a massive rager, dude.
He runs to meet him.
Yep.
He doesn't walk to meet him. He runs to meet him.
Yep. Runs to meet him, throws a rager of a party, breaks out all the bells and whistles. He gets out the good food, lets him eat off the good china, you know, the one that's locked away in the storage cabinet.
Do people still do that?
Oh, yeah.
Do they?
Grandma still does that. My grandma still does that.
Okay. All right.
And then the younger son is like, or the son that stayed home is like, wait a minute. I am here all the time doing all the things you ask me constantly and consistently, and you're throwing this big rager for him. Why? There's a whole story behind it. Well, Clemson is the son that stayed home. You've been grinding. You've been doing all the right things. You've been doing the right things the right way, and you're getting the guys that you want and are supposed to get for the most part. This is new territory for South Carolina. The unfortunate part in sports is that what do we talk about? Conflict, right? We talk about conflict. Even when we don't like it, We talk about conflict. And what generates conflict more than anything else? Change. Change generates conflict. If nothing changes, there's no fight. Unless the fight is nothing's changing and I want it to, right? Can we be honest? Like let's call a spade here. What is the source of conflict, for instance, in American politics? People who want to drive change to our societal culture and people who do not want change in our societal culture. At the core of it, that is what drives the conflict. The same is true in sports. What drives conflict in sports? Change. Changes in coaches, changes in cultures, changes in personnel, changes in schemes, tactics, stadiums, television production. Anytime something changes, or anytime people try to change something, that is what we talk about. That is what we address. Clemson hasn't changed. Dabo's Dabo. The recruiting structures are the recruiting structures. They're not going to be different because it's worked and it continues to work for Dabo and the Tigers. For all the talk about doom and gloom around Clemson, as we have mentioned, Clemson was 1, maybe 2 wins away from being in the college football playoffs this year. Nothing has changed. And on top of that, nobody is asking, nobody of any relevance is asking for anything to change at Clemson, right? Is anybody out there saying Clemson should X or Y? Yes, there are some people, but nobody of any importance within the Clemson hierarchy is demanding change. Why? Because what you're doing is work. Now, one day it might not work, and then you'll have a true conversation about change, and then there's conflict. But things are changing in Columbia. Things are changing in Columbia, including the successes in the recruiting. And that change generates conflict. It generates conflict amongst South Carolina fans. It generates conflict within the Clemson-South Carolina rivalry. It generates conflict within the SEC East, and that is what we talk about. When things start changing at Clemson because they aren't working, which, again, you were probably a grand total of what? 20 points away from being in the college football playoff this year? When things stop working at Clemson and changes start happening, whether they are driven by Clemson or not, if tomorrow, and by the way, I will tell you right now, that last offensive lineman we've talked about, there were 3 powerhouse linemen inside the top, I think, 20 offensive linemen in the country, all out of South Carolina. 2 of them have selected the Gamecocks of South Carolina. If they get the third, who is projected to lean to Clemson, if South Carolina gets the third and clean sweeps all of the top 20 offensive linemen out of the state of South Carolina and gets them all to Columbia, that'll be change, because that is the Gamecocks directly beating Clemson in a recruiting battle, something that has not happened in a long time. That has changed. That is conflict, and that will be talked about. But that decision hasn't been made. And therefore, what we will talk about is the conflict between Clemson and South Carolina in the process of recruiting this kid, and how interesting it is that for the first time, again, probably in a long time, that there was a recruiting battle at one position, offensive line, or a few positions, offensive line, within the state of South Carolina for highly touted recruits. And so far, 2 of the 3 players have picked the Gamecocks. Yes, there is something to that. So we'll talk about that later on in the program. When we come back, I saw something yesterday. Nope, scratch that. This morning on my way into work. I know. I saw something on my way into work this morning on Woodruff Road. No, sorry, Haywood Road. On the way to Woodruff, but on Haywood Road that I have never seen in my life before. And I have a special message that I want to send out to a particular group of folks because of it. Very limited group of folks, but I know a few were listening. I'll tell you what the most ridiculous thing I've seen this morning, the most ridiculous thing I've seen in a long time this morning was when we come back on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
All right, I'm worried now because I want this to be a big payoff, and the tease was so good.
It is. Put it this way. I was in my car And
Don't spoil.
I'm not going to. You remember the other day how I was talking about when I sit down at a restaurant, I choose my chair based on escape plans and action plans for things that have never happened in my life. This morning, I was this close to one of my action plans having to go into play. I'm hitting the restroom. I shall return briefly. Don't miss me too much.
Technology, you will need fewer visits than ever. Save even more with most insurance plans like MetLife and Delta Dental. MyAffordableBraces.com has a clinic near you in Greenville, Spartanburg, and Anderson. Schedule your free consultation, exam, and x-rays today. Easy payment plans and affordable braces. A lifetime of smiles you can afford at MyAffordableBraces.com.
I always wanted to learn Spanish, but I never thought I'd have the time. Then I discovered Babbel.
Babbel's lessons are fun. They only take like 10 or 15 minutes, and in 3 weeks, presto, you're starting to speak another language. Like magic.
I love that Babbel's lessons aren't just robots talking. They're voiced by native speakers, so you get the pronunciation just right. And they're designed by real language teachers, so you learn how to have real-world conversations, things you'll actually use.
It's incredible. After using Babbel, I'm ready to start having.
So I'm having a philosophical conversation with on Twitter right now about wrestling phrases. And I don't know if you guys agree with me or not, but wrestling phrases are a lesson on life. Don't start nothing, won't be nothing. Definitely applies to any situation. You start something, there's going to be something. But if you don't start nothing, there won't be nothing. If you want some, come get some. That's saying, hey, I'm here. Look at me. Let's do this. There's a lot of things. Say hello to the bad guy. There's one in every building. Sometimes there's more than one. To be the man, you got to beat the man. Applies in every situation, especially on a sports station. Don't hate the player, hate the game. Also applies in just about every work situation. And as I've told some other people who deny it, it has worked its way into the lexicon of everybody. I am talking about how wrestling catchphrase philosophies apply to life. Because I think Stacks took something that I tweeted literal.
What catchphrase?
Well, you have to look up the Twitter and the stuff,
Have
man.
to look up the
You have to
Twitter.
look up the Twitter and
Hey, Steve, can you
the-
do this for me?
the post. No, I can't.
Steven, send me a tweet.
Anytime I think of that, I just
Can
picture.
you put out a tweeter for me.
I tried to find it on my phone, but you know.
So if you were listening earlier this week, we had a discussion about how you choose your seats at a restaurant, right? And I mentioned that, and it drives both the mom and the lady friend crazy when we go out to eat. And I got this from my dad, right? Because when we went out to eat, Pops would always select his seat first. And I never understood it, right? Like now he would pull out the chair for my mom, but he would go, I'm going to sit there. And I never got that. I'm like, why does it matter? We're in a restaurant, right? And Pops would say, look, if somebody, I have to be able to see the door. If somebody comes in and starts up some BS, I want to be able to react to it before anybody else does to keep you guys safe. And so now I have the same philosophy. When we go out to eat, I pick my chair so that I can have view of the room. I mark out where the exits are. And I mean, I do this everywhere we go. But when you're at a restaurant, you're going to sit for all, you pick your chair. So the point
I thought all guys do that.
and they might. It may
I
be
mean,
just a dude thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I picked it up from The Godfather or something. I don't
Right.
know. I don't know. It's just I do that. I always equated it to bad neighborhood, being aware at all times, that
Sure.
kind of stuff. But
100%. When we go, and now I'm talking anywhere, like to the mall. If I go to the mall with the lady friend to do some shopping, as we're walking, right? I'm picking out, all right, there's an exit over that way. There's a big desk over there. If something happens, we can dive behind it, whatever, right?
do you go directly to As Seen on TV first, or do you hit that last in the mall?
That is always on the way out, right? Because whether I pick up something from that ridiculous store is entirely determined by how much money I spent on everything else.
You think I'm joking, but you see it on TV. You can go to the store and look at it and go, it is real.
It is. My favorite is the Bug Assault. Have you seen the Bug Assault?
Sounds familiar.
It's
So
like a Nerf
Oh
gun,
yeah, no, yeah, I've
but
seen
it
that.
shoots salt.
Dude, I want
out
to
of
get one of
Oh, it's
those
a
so
blast.
bad,
I've got my
but I'm afraid I might try to go after the ninja squirrels, and that might be frowned
It's hit
upon.
on go. Like if I shot you from here, like you'd feel it, but it's not. But like any further than that, like it's for hunting bugs up close.
Dude, I think it would hurt.
It's fun.
I think it
It
would
doesn't
hurt.
feel nice, but
Yeah.
it doesn't really hurt.
I mean, you've got layers of clothing on, so it's probably not going to hurt you as bad.
It doesn't feel good. All right. So the point is, you can call it paranoia or whatever you want, but anywhere I go, I've got an exit strategy, right? Like I'm okay. If something, I've got one for this radio station. Somebody comes up here angry. I know the different exits and the different ways to get there from anywhere in the building at any given time. I've got the plans down.
Or he just jumps behind the offensive lineman in the room,
Correct.
also known in video game terms as meat shield.
Lonzo, get that guy. Go get him, Zoe. So I'm driving to work this morning. I thought there was the chance that my action plan was going to go. Now, like I have one when you, like anybody else, you drive defensively, you drive carefully. If you see, like for me, if I see somebody acting up, road rage, my plan is get the hell away from that guy, right? But I thought I was going to have one kick in this morning that I've never dealt with before. So I was driving into work this AM. My route brings me down Haywood Drive to get onto 385, get off on Woodruff and come here. Haywood Road, whatever it is. I'm sitting at a four-way stoplight at a big intersection on Haywood Road. And in the turn lane, crossing in front of me, right to left, is an older red, I think it was a Honda Civic, but an older red, smaller, two-door, what is that, a sedan, coupe, whatever it is?
Did it have a hatchback?
Yes, it did actually.
So I would call it a hatchback.
So it's a hatchback. So it's sitting at the light, and as I'm looking at this car, I realize the windows are down, which is weird because it's raining outside, right? And I'm like, all right, I don't know why I have your windows down, but hell, maybe their window's broken. Who knows? And then a South Carolina highway patrolman pulls up behind that car in the turn line, stops for a second, and lights him up. Thinking, okay, maybe they got a bad tag, right? Don't have their sticker displayed. Maybe they got a turn signal out. He's just going to let them know. Maybe they were speeding up to that point. You know, I've been told by some cops in the past that it's easier to wait until someone's at a traffic light to light them up than it is to do it in the middle of the road and they panic or freak out or whatever and do something dumb, pull it over. Anyway, the highway patrolman lights him up. And then after a couple of seconds of lighting him up, the highway patrolman gets out of his car at the light still, walks up to the car, walks up to the window, and without hesitation takes his flashlight and starts looking in the car, right? And I'm like, oh, man, like I don't know that this is routine procedure. I'm not a cop. I don't know.
But the news guy in you started buzzing,
I'm
didn't
like,
it?
yes, it did. I'm like, okay, this is weird. This is weird. I'm still at a red light, by the way, right? So the cop, Lonzo, then just opens the door, right? Doesn't ask, just opens the door from the outside, takes the flashlight, starts looking in and around the driver's feet, looking around, and puts his hand, he's got one hand on the door, he opens it all the way, and then he takes the other hand and it goes down to its waist. And I'm like, oh no, something's happening, right? Like they don't just fling open the door for nothing. So they just open the door, flashlight's going around, and I see the driver, which is a young woman. Now, the car's over here, so all I really see is like the top of the head through the open window of the open door, and it looks like a young woman. And the cop, the highway patrolman, leans into the car, and as he does, the wheels on the car zzz, and on the wet pavement, and the car just starts to go, right? So the patrolman is now half in, half out of the car, has a hand on the wheel. The car is now moving, not like flying away, because it took a second to get traction on the road. The road was wet. Pulling away. The cop, and I got to give him a ton of credit, because this was a stonesy way to handle it. Looks up to make sure there's no one. Now, at this point, my light has turned green, right? Obviously, I'm not going anywhere, because if this car goes straight, it's going directly across me. And if this car turns left, it's again, cross me and be real close to me. And so the last action hero in me, Rob Brown, is like, okay, if this car turns right in front of me and this cop is hanging out of it, like, what do I do, right? What do I do to assist here? Do I put my car in front of the car? Like, do I let them hit my car to stop them? Do I jump out and try to, like, grab the cop so that he's not getting dragged by this car? Do I just try to grab him as they go by? Like, what do I do? The cop leans in. The car starts going to get away from the cop. As it starts going, the cop, I see his face, because, like, this is all right in front of me. He looks up. He looks straight ahead to make sure there's no cars coming. He looks to the left to make sure there's no cars over there. He tries to yank the wheel to the left to, like, get the car to turn and hit the curb over on the left-hand side. And as he's doing that, with his other hand, he drops his flashlight. And with his other, and I hope I'm not getting him in trouble, because I don't know, like, I want to make sure he's not breaking protocol or whatever. But as that car is going left, Lonzo, he takes his other hand, he reaches into the car, and he starts mashing on the horn, right? So he is blowing the horn of the car while he's trying to force the car to the left. Well, I don't know what happened inside of the car, but whoever was driving was able to, as they were moving forward, get his hands off the steering wheel. The cop spins out of the way of the car, and they just drive off, right? So the highway patrolman runs back to his car, picks up his flashlight, gets into his patrol car, turns on the sirens, and just takes off after him. Just follow him down. I don't remember what road. If y'all know Haywood Road, there's an intersection where there is a gas station on one side and a big church on the other. It was at that road, right? It was at that road. They just take off. The cop tries to spin the wheel to the left, is blowing the horn in the car. Finally, the driver gets the cop out of the car, closes the door, takes off. Cop runs back, picks up his flashlight, gets into the patrol car, and then starts following after that car with the sirens on. And what I'm going to say is this. The impression that I got, I am speculating and nothing else. All right? Completely a guess. But based on the fact that the window was down and there was smoke coming out of the car, my suspicion is the driver was smoking weed. All right? It's a total guess. But the context clues, the window was down, the smoke was coming out of the window, and the fact that the cop saw that, lit him up, walked up, and immediately opened the door and started looking around on the floor and stuff leads me to believe the driver probably had weed, threw it on the ground, tried to put it out, and the cop saw it and was going to arrest him, and that's why they took off running, right? Just a guess. regardless of how you feel about the legalization of weed in this country, driving while you're high is bad. All right? If you want to smoke, smoke. I don't care. If you want to hit the hippie lettuce, that's on you. I got your back. It's your life. Go crazy. Don't drink. Don't drive and do it, right? Just like drinking. You want to knock back a couple of whiskeys? I got your back, man. You want to knock back some cold brews? I got your back. Just don't do it and drive. I end a lot of shows by saying that. Here's what stood out to me about that interaction, though, was the fact that at a point where 2 tons of steel and rubber were trying to get away from this cop, from this highway patrolman, at a point where the wrong move puts him under the back tires of this car while this driver was trying to get away from him. The very first thing that the highway patrolman did, Lonzo, was to look up and around to make sure that there was no one else around who could be impacted by this car. The very first thing he did was to look up to make sure there was no oncoming traffic, to look left to make sure there were no pedestrians about to cross the road, and then to look left to make sure nobody was about to turn in front of this car.
Protect and serve, man.
Let's
The
say
mandate.
this. I will be the hippie and say, yes, there's a lot of bad cops out there. Okay? A lot of power trippers. But damn it, there's not a lot of good ones. All right? Damn it, there's not a lot of good ones who absolutely take, protect and serve and do right for the people who they watch after and handle it the right way. And this guy was very clearly one of them. This guy looked up at the risk of potentially being run over by the back wheels of this car trying to get away from him after a traffic stop. The very first thing this guy did was to look up and make sure there was no one else around that would have been hurt or injured by this guy trying to get away from him. So a sincere and quick message to those of you in law enforcement and first responder positions who have or are willing to put yourself in the potential risk of bodily harm in order to look out for the rest of us. I know there's a lot of talk about cops. And again, we're being dishonest to say there's not a lot of bad ones. But there are a hell of a lot more good ones. And there are a hell of a lot of more good ones who are constantly looking out and are willing to risk harm to themselves in order to make sure that the rest of us don't have to deal with dangerous people. A sincere, a heartfelt thank you. This is one of those things, you see it on television, Lonzo. We see it play out in cop dramas. We see it play out on, whatever that show used to be called, Live PD or whatever.
You mean cops?
Well,
I guess
cops when I was a kid.
Yeah, Live PD. Yeah.
Live PD was the new age cops.
I think it still exists. But
It's a different name
yeah.
now. It's like Live Patrol. I don't know what it's called. But the point is, we've seen all this. That was the first time in my adult life, Zoe, that I've seen the beginning of a police pursuit. Never seen the beginning of a police pursuit. I know it happens all the time. I know it happens daily around the country. I've never seen it in person. And it was a moment of, what the hell do I do, right? My reaction was, what do I do? What do I do? Do I go over there and help? Do I stay the hell out of the way? If he starts going this way, do I put my car in front of this guy? If he comes this way and the cop's being dragged, do I get out, try to grab the cop so he's not dragged? Like, what do I do? And while I'm having these thoughts about what do I do while this thing plays out, this guy's immediate reaction is to look up, look center, look left, in all the potential directions that this guy could have gone, or this gal or whoever it was could have gone, to look up and look out for anybody else that might have been impacted or harmed by them, all the while risking himself getting dragged under the wheels of 2,000 pounds of steel. Didn't even cross his mind. Immediately went with, let me make sure nobody else is in harm's way so I can fix the problem and get this dangerous person out of the way. So, I know that we have some law enforcement officers that listen to this show. You've come up to me and talked to me. I know there is at least one firehouse in the region that listens to the show. I've spoken to them at a Swamp Rabbits game. They've come up and told me they listen to us during the day. To those of you that put your own asses on the line to make sure that the rest of us have the safest world, region, area, community we can possibly live in, I say to you sincerely and genuinely and thoughtfully as I can, thank you for what you do. Thank you for the risk you're willing to take. Thank you for the risk that you do take, because it all allows us to just go about our lives, honestly, without having to worry about it more often than we don't. Thank you for what you do. And if that guy, that highway patrolman, have no idea if he might be listening or not, if you are a highway patrolman listening to this show and know who this cat was, you know who this guy was, please tell him he gets a massive fist bump from Rob Brown on the Rob Brown Show. A massive fist bump for having the rocks to have a first thought of, let me make sure nobody else is in trouble here, even if I get dragged by this car. Make sure you dab that guy up for us, because we appreciate it. All right, let's take a break. When we come back here in just a minute, National Football League's MVP and Player of the Year nominations are starting to trickle in. And shockingly, a host of quarterbacks are all amongst the names to be honored. We'll tell you who they are and see who jumps out in your opinion and more. My name is Rob Brown. The great one, Lonzo, is the helm. You're listening to The Rob Brown Show. You're listening to The Fan Upstate. All right, kids, we're here. We're back. Kevin said, why didn't you record it? Honestly, dude, the thought of pulling up my phone and recording it never popped into my brain, right? Like, my first thought was, if this cop starts getting dragged, is there anything I can do, right? Like, if this car starts pulling away, because it did, and this highway patrolman starts getting dragged by this vehicle, is there anything I can do to help him? My first thought was not, oh, let me get my phone and video. Like, I know for a lot of people, the first thought now is this is going to go over on social, right? My genuine first thought was, if this guy starts, I was looking at the side of the car. This wasn't in front of me. I was looking at the front right quarter panel of the car. And when they started getting dragged, they went in front of me, right? From my right to my left in front of me. And I could not have seen the tag from where I was, A, and B, I have done ride-alongs with cops in the past.
The cop would have checked the tag before he got out of the car.
When they make a stop, even though it was like the fastest I've seen a cop get out of a car at a traffic stop, the first thing they do is radio in the tag, right? Like, as soon as he lights you up, he's noting the tag number. He is either going to radio into dispatch, right? I just stopped a red Honda Accord license plate number, whatever. Or he's going to write that tag number down. If, listen, there are times when a cop's going to pull you over and give you a warning as opposed to a citation, right? Like, oh, you're going 4 over, I'm not going to write you up. They'll still make the stop, but they won't necessarily radio your tag in, but they will write it down in case you do something stupid so that then they can write it in. Because I promise you, by the time that car got to the next exit or the next intersection, I promise you there were a couple of other SCHP cars already on the way to that area looking for that make, model, and tag number. So there was nothing in my opinion. There is nothing in my opinion that a phone would have helped me with in that moment, right? That cop had already radioed in the information, was getting into his car. The only concern I had is if this cop starts getting dragged by this car, what can I do to help him, right? I was ready if he did get run over to call 911 if that was necessary. If they came in my direction, I didn't know if it was going to be try to grab the cop and pull him from the car. I didn't know if it was going to be put my car in front of their car and let them hit me to stop that vehicle. I didn't know what the case was going to be. Kevin said, I wonder if he did crash into the suspect, would you be liable for the damages or injuries? I don't know what the ramifications would be. I know those types of lawsuits have gone through before, but I don't know what the answer to that is. The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. Rob Alonzo and you. Be a part of the radio broadcast. 844 fan phone. 844 FANFONE. That's 844-326-3663. You can text us at 71307. 71307. If you want to come at us in that direction, you are, of course, welcome to. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN, F-A-N, and we will read them on the air. Already got the hilarious text coming in about Rob being a pretend hero. Listen, I didn't do anything, right? The end of the day, the best thing I could do based on what happened with that, the best thing that I could do was just stay the hell out of the way, right? There was nothing I was going to do to help there. The guy didn't come in my direction. The car didn't come in my direction. The cop was able to get out of the car without getting dragged. He got in his and took off after the guy. There was nothing I was going to do to help. I'm not pretending there was. The only point that I wanted there was to give you guys the story that I witnessed firsthand this AM about why it is that I respect the hell out of men and women who put on badges and do the work the right way. It is very much appreciated. I saw it play out firsthand this morning. All right. A couple more things I wanted to get into. I won't spend a ton of time on this because I know most of you don't care. But the Live Tour PGA Tour drama has taken an interesting turn. I said back in the first segment of the show, what is it that ultimately drives conversation, debate, whatever, conflict, whatever you want to call it? Change, right? The Live Tour was the biggest change to golf in a very long time. Therefore, it became the hottest topic in golf for a very long time. Now, there is personal conflict coming out of this. Apparently, at the event that is taking off right now, Patrick Reed and Rory McIlroy have gotten into it. They are in Dubai this week, where there is a tournament taking place where competitors from both tours are playing. Rory McIlroy was on the practice green. Stick with me, because even if you're not a golf guy, the conflict here might get you interested. Rory McIlroy was on the practice green and was lining up some putts. Patrick Reed, notorious cheater on the PGA Tour and now on the Live Tour, Patrick Reed made his way over to where Rory McIlroy was. He acknowledged McIlroy's caddy, Harry Diamond, without incident. And then he walked over to the Northern Irishman, who was squatted down reading a green. Reed paused a few seconds near McIlroy with the intention to say hello. McIlroy did not acknowledge him. Patrick Reed then saluted Rory McIlroy, the old golf salute, the tip of the cap, yeah? McIlroy did not acknowledge him a second time. Reed at that point gave up and walked away. But before he did, Lonzo, he pulled a golf tee out of his pocket and he threw it at Rory McIlroy.
Is this like what they do in Europe the equivalent of a slap in the face with a gauntlet now, or
I don't know. It's golf. You're wearing
Why
a
not?
glove. Take off the golf glove and slap him with it, right?
it might be sweaty. It might hurt.
He threw a golf tee. Now, I've golfed for.
Did he hit him with it, or he just like threw it at his feet?
He just threw it, according to Yahoo Sports, quote, in McElroy's direction, end quote, with a, quote, look of disgust, end quote, on his face.
Did McElroy see the tee?
McElroy apparently did know what happened because Rory McIlroy, who Reed labeled in a press conference later in that day, quote, an immature child and petty, end quote. Rory McIlroy has fired back. He said he can't believe this has turned into a story. Oh, okay. Rory McIlroy says that, quote, I was down by my bag and he came up to me and I didn't feel the need to acknowledge him, end quote. All right, no problem there, right? No problem there. He says he can't believe this became a story. But
Wait a minute.
why?
Why are you saying there's no problem there? If you don't feel the need to acknowledge someone, that's kind of a diss.
I mean, I guess it is.
Yeah.
That's fair.
It's like, yeah, I know you're there, but I don't care.
Here's where this story got more interesting. Here's what Rory McIlroy added at the end of that presser. He said, quote, so I didn't see a tee coming my direction at all, but apparently that's what happened. If the roles were reversed and I'd have thrown a tee at him, I'd be expecting a lawsuit. I mean, I got a subpoena from his lawyers on Christmas Eve. You can't pretend like nothing's happening, right? I was trying to have a nice time with my family and someone shows up on our doorstep and delivers that. You're not going to take that well. I'm living in reality. I don't know where he's living. If I were in his shoes, I wouldn't expect a hello or a handshake. Apparently.
So what's the subpoena about?
So McIlroy is embroiled in Patrick Reed's defamation case against the Golf Channel and the PGA Tour. Reed's lawyer wants McIlroy and Tiger Woods to testify about the players-only meeting the duo convened at the PGA Tour event last year at Augusta, according to Yahoo, after which Commissioner Jay Monahan announced an overhaul to this year's schedule, which elevated events featuring $20 million prize funds. Patrick Reed is insinuating that due to the conversations that have taken place between PGA Tour players behind closed doors, and the way that they have been angled toward PGA Tour players who have abandoned the tour to play on the LIV Golf Tour, Patrick Reed is now suing the Golf Channel, which has been relatively pro PGA Tour from the beginning, for defamation, and he is now asking members of the tour to show up and testify in that defamation case, including Rory McIlroy, who apparently was served a subpoena on Christmas Eve in front of his family, and now he just expects to be buddy-buddy with Rory McIlroy after that. This is so petty, and I love it. It's so petty, and as a golf fan, I absolutely adore this story because it's giving me some conflict, some chaos. And isn't that what we want?
As a non-golf fan, I'm waiting to see if it comes to blows, do you use your clubs and which one do you choose? But that's, I'm violent like that, I guess.
That's 1 hour in the books. I will not, as a pacifist, acknowledge Lonzo's violent streak.
This is why Rob will get a big Bertha right across his cheek.
Back after this for the second hour of the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate.
You still make big Berthas?
So you can't see it because it's covered up with a stash. Right on this side of my face, I have a scar on my lip because my cousin hit me in the face with a driver one time.
On purpose? Or did you walk into it?
It was an accident.
Okay.
It was an accident.
Cameron hit my guitarist in the ribs, full on swing, because he thought he had moved when he went golfing with us one time. And I thought I was going to have to fight the guitarist because he was mad. I was like, come on, man. He didn't do it on purpose. He did. I mean, he was ticked. I'm like, oh, great. Here we go. This is the end of the band, which happened anyway. But still, I mean, it could have been over that day. He hit him hard. Oh, you could hear the ribs crunching.
Ooh.
I think if you're getting if golfers are going to get in a fight, they're going with the putter, right? I mean, depending on what kind of putter you got, the head on that putter is going to be.
So part of the question is for me, golf clubs are not cheap. And while they are designed for impact,
You just talked about last week about throwing one up in the air. So
Right,
I mean,
driver.
you know,
my driver. While they are made for contact, they are made for contact with a low mass and highly compressible golf ball.
or nose. If you get a side shot,
Right, but if you hit somebody, if you
a
go
side
full
shot.
swing, if you go
Side-
full swing
Okay.
and you catch somebody in the dome,
No, not like straight like this. I'm talking about like this.
the ridiculous level of accuracy that would require.
These professional golfers, Rob? I believe they are.
Right, but I'm talking about you. You were telling me Big Bertha to the face, not Patrick Reed.
Well,
And also,
by the way, using the Big Bertha, the head's so big on that thing, it doesn't really matter. That's definitely going to
also-
hurt.
the swing plane of a golf ball is not what you would be coming at a head, right? The swing plane of a golf ball is more rotated down and through, and then you pull at the end.
I have lots of practice taking out zombies with the golf club. So
And a controller.
yeah. So I mean, yeah, but it's got to use physics.
Gotta use.
I believe it's pretty accurate. So would it be better to use it as like say a war axe? So coming down, so as to use the head as a bludgeon or
Right, but
something
like
like
you're
that.
talking about, I'm telling you, if you take a driver to the side of somebody's dome, you're snapping the head off that driver. You will use it once. Now, then it becomes
If not,
a
you will
rapier.
get made fun of by your peers if you don't snap the
You will
head off.
snap that.
That means
putter,
you got a sorry swing.
the putter would be a good choice because obviously the head of a putter is much more
Unless
solid.
it's a belly putter. I don't think that.
It-
Although you got more
No, you get
distance
more
with.
distance with
Yeah,
that,
you're right.
So the head of a putter is much more thick. It's got more mass to it because it's made to be thick. And the joint between the head of the putter and the shaft is going to be a lot more rigid because your driver is going to you want it lightweight through the shaft and a little bit more give because of the way the golf ball reacts. A putter, you want it to be much more stiff and have a left give because you want to make sure when you contact the golf ball, that contact is very solid so the ball rolls true off of it. The putter would be a good pick. As a golfer, it would not be because putters are bleeping expensive. And if you hit them that hard on something, you risk throwing the angle of the putter face off, and now your putts won't be true anymore. So if I'm in a zombie apocalypse situation, my golfing days are likely over. Every club's a weapon at this point.
Unless you're Bill Murray. Bill Murray in Zombieland was still he's playing golf out there with the zombies
Fair enough.
until he got killed by someone.
Is it
But
fair in a fight to hit or kick the nuts?
there's no such thing as a fair fight, especially
If
as you get older.
start the fight, no. If you willingly engage in a fight that both people know is a fight, no. If somebody jumps you, absolutely.
If you're like an MMA guy or a martial artist, you don't need to do all that. But if you're some guy who likes, say me, who's a grandpa now, who knows that I'm riddled with the arthritis, and I'm
Riddled with arthritis.
gonna pick up whatever I can to survive the battle because it's more about survival. It's not about winning, and I guess survival is winning, but. You reach a certain level where fight or flight becomes only fight because there ain't no flight left in
Becomes
you.
only
Yeah,
fight.
because I know I can't run no more, so I'm here. How do I get out the door? QC in the first break.
10-4.
I would refer to it as an inner thigh cross kick, Kevin. Not what you said.
Our Numenous of the Rob Brown Show starts right now. This is the Fan Upstate, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome in Rob Brown and the great one, Lonzo. It is the Weenus and Pitch Show. Glad to have you along for the ride. How long does that inside joke roll?
Forever?
Fair enough. Fair enough. Glad to have you guys. If you do not watch the stream, you should. Because not only are you going to get the show in its entirety on your computer, you will still hear the show like you would on the radio. But you're also going to get to watch behind the scenes as Lonzo and I actually do the show. But you're going to get behind the scenes off-air conversation that you will never get on the air. Like, for instance, in our last break, where we spent the entire break discussing and debating what golf club would make for the best weapon in two scenarios. A, just a regular fight, right? Somebody jumps you after a round of golf, and you're going to use a club to defend yourself. What club is the best option there? And B, if you had to pick a club for a zombie apocalypse scenario, what club would be the best club to use in that scenario? I submitted for approval that the best club, if you were to be jumped in a fight, would likely, I think, I'm going to go with a pitching wedge is going to be my ultimate submission here. A driver, which is most people's first thought. A driver is most people's first thought. And while you would likely get a more solid impact, the problem you're going to bump into is unless you KO them on the first impact, driver heads notoriously snap off of drivers if there is too much force added to them. So if you catch the guy in the rib, not only are you likely not ending the fight, but you're probably snapping the head off the driver, and now you're stuck with effectively a hole punch, right? Which I guess could be effective, but is also going to be easier to stop than a swinging driver. The putter I'm not using because putters are freaking expensive, and they are designed so that you can trust the angle of the putter face to get solid contact. So if it's one fight situation, I don't want to ruin my $500 putter by clocking a dude in the dome, even though it is more massive, right? And I don't mean big, I mean it's dense. So
do they really cost that much? $500?
A good putter is expensive.
Wow.
Good. It's the club that it is the only club.
So it's not the skill, it's the equipment.
Correct. In this case, yeah.
Okay.
It is, I mean, skills involved, but the equipment makes a huge difference. And keep in mind, the putter is the only club you are going to use on every hole, right? So it's the one you got to trust the most. I don't want to clock a dude in the dome with my putter and throw off the angle of my putter face, and now I've got to buy a new putter or just never be good at putting again, which is one of the few aspects of golf I actually am good at. Pitching wedge gives you a lot more control. It gives you a much more solid contact because you've got the density of the club head, but also, Lonzo, the club head is very angled. So not only you're getting contact, but you're actually placing more of the contact on the edge of the blade. And as a basic understanding of physics will tell you, the more pressure there is in a smaller point of contact, all of that pressure, all of that energy goes just into the blade. Not only are you getting a more dense connection, but you're doing it on a lower surface of contact, increasing the PSI into the target. The pitching wedge is the optimal one fight club.
I'm going to use a reference here that most will get. There'll be a couple. I'll have to look it up. I think using the Al Cervic putter would be the best way to go because it's guided. So you guarantee, think Caddyshack. So you're guaranteed once you put in the numbers to hit where you're aiming.
That's fair.
Kind of like a drone shot to a degree.
But also, and this is an important aspect of this, that is not something any of us own.
Those don't exist.
Laser guided putters, no.
I got to believe they exist somewhere.
But again, if you're getting into a fight, I don't have time to do calculations, man. I gotta trust.
Speaking of trust,
trust
if you're gonna, you should always do that.
Trust the thrust.
Yes. In some cases, that could get you in trouble, especially if it's really late at night and you've been somewhere, doing your thing.
Ladies and gentlemen, the great one.
Do you count on your caddy if you have a caddy to pick the right club for the fight? I mean, you're doing the fighting, but your caddy is standing there. Is he participating or is he going, listen, he's got a weak neck. Here we go. Right here. Here's the club you need.
In what world are you getting jumped into a fight where you've got time to ask somebody else the strategy?
No, do you ask the caddy? No. They walk up to the caddy and the caddy just I've seen it on TV. It's got to be real. They just grab the club you need. That's because you have that kind of trust between the golfer and the caddy. So you got to look at your caddy, and he's gonna look at the situation, look at the lay of the land, if you will, and know which club that you need to be successful.
Okay, fair enough. Let's go ahead and put that conversation back in the bag.
It's way to go. It is sports related. In a lot of ways.
In a lot of ways, you aren't wrong.
It's combat sports. It's golf. I mean, come on. It's Dana White's next venture, I'm sure.
Golf club duels. I like it.
That'd be better than slap fighting.
All right, ladies and gentlemen. 844-FAN phone, 844-FANFONE, 844-326-3663. Andrew submits that the driving iron. Andrew from the Berg says driving iron. It's not a bad pick. I think a lot of the same reason with the pitching wedge, but your driving iron is going to have a little bit more bold face. So the question is, are you going for substantial contact on a one shot? I'm playing the physics role. If I can get just the blade of the club, but with still the same amount of contact, I'm concentrating the PSI that I'm connecting with into one specific area, but I am trusting my accuracy on this, right? Because if I don't catch you in a good spot, then that's irrelevant. Now I've just hurt you really badly in one spot, but you're still coming at me. Whereas with like a driver or a driving iron, you're going to kind of increase that surface area, increases the opportunity that you hit something important.
So, by the way, I think you also need to look at the size of opponent. If you're going up against Rory, you don't need anything major, but if you're going against Jose Maria Olazabal,
that's the golfer you decided to go with?
I can't get the easy one is John Daly. I just wanted to see if I could actually say his name because
I respect the hell out of that. That's a tough reference to lean on.
But dude is thick. He's kind of old European thick. You could see him wearing the smoking jacket at home by the fire. Yeah,
European,
even to the point of I don't know, Scottish, Irish kind of fighter. You could see him, being back in the day.
I like it.
Yeah. So if you're going up against that guy who has a really big head, by the way, also probably you don't go for the head.
Probably not. All right.
I love when my reference just shocks him.
I did not expect a Jose Maria Olazabal take at Alonso. Of all the golfers you could have gone with, that ain't one of the ones I would have. In 100 guesses, I wouldn't have guessed that's the guy you picked. All right, let's get to some other stuff, ladies and gentlemen. Texas says, Rob, listening to your show first thing in the morning starts my day off really well. Every day I can listen to you. I love your show. Thank you, Texter. Appreciate that.
It's because of quality stuff like what we just did, of course.
Like best golf club to use it as a weapon in a zombie apocalypse.
We call that being prepared.
Which, by the way, zombie apocalypse situation, the answer is putter because I'm probably done playing golf. So now the condition of my putter is no longer relevant to me. Now I'm using the most dense club head in my bag. It's going to do the most damage.
Yeah, but you use your extra putter first. Everyone's got that other putter because they feel like, I got the yips. This thing ain't working right. I'm going to go to my backup. use your backup first.
You know what's really insulting about that? You are 100% correct. There are 2 putters in my bag.
Dude, I know sports.
You are 100%
Just because I'm not into something doesn't mean I don't know about it.
100%. There are 2 putters in my bag.
Plus, I've seen you play D&D and seen other people when dice don't work. Supposedly
I
they
got more
think
dice.
I'm going to go with the other dice. It's the same thing in any sport. Well, that's not working. Let me go for my other one.
100%. I have 2 putters in my bag. I have my Pop's Old Ray Cook, which is the putter I use as my normal putter. It comes out of the bag on hole 1 every round I play. But if I get 3-4 deep and my old Ray Cook satellite isn't doing it for me, I've got a backup Titleist putter that sits in the back of the bag just in case. In case.
Unless you dual wield.
No, yeah, I can only putt with 1 putter. I'm not that good.
Well, if you're ambidextrous, though. Yeah.
You have exposed your nerddom even further, Lonzo. All right, let's get into some sports in here, shall we? Ladies and gentlemen, Lonzo and I yesterday laid down the most recent episode of the Views from Mint Street podcast. Your home for all the Carolina Panther talk you can possibly stand, and then just a little bit more. And we got to the head coaching search, but I also had to bring up a mock draft that I found. Now, I said on that pod, still go download and listen to it because there's a lot more information than just what I'm going to talk about here. There are 3 things that jump off the top of my head. 3 things that I do not care about or want to hear about from you. Number 1, I do not want to hear about your fantasy football team. There are 2 people who care about your fantasy football team. You and the person you're playing this weekend. Now, I always welcome your fantasy football questions on this show. Rob, I've got receiver X, but I'm thinking about making a change to receiver Y. Should I, why, or why not? Fantasy football questions are always welcome on the air. What I don't want is for you to call in and go, Rob, my fantasy football team has this many points. All right, cool. The second thing that I do not want to hear about from you is your dreams. Let me clarify all that because this came up on the pod yesterday. I care about your dreams, your hopes, your aspirations, your goals in life. And as I have mentioned to every kid that has come through here looking to get into this business that I've been more than willing to mentor to my limited experience, I very much care about your hopes, goals, dreams, and aspirations. And if I can help any of you reach them, please feel free to reach out to me. I will do whatever I can to help you reach your dreams. What I genuinely don't care about is your subconscious hallucinations while you sleep.
So, Rob, last night I dreamt that I got a new house and I moved in and the whole place was run by crows.
Cool.
Just helping you with an example.
Cool.
I didn't actually dream that, but I could.
Cool. You see what I get, ladies and gentlemen? Now, if I was a
Well,
psychologist.
that's what he doesn't want. Okay.
Right.
I'm giving them an example of what he doesn't want.
Correct. I don't care about your dreams because I am not a psychologist. I cannot tell you what the deeper meaning of them are. I can't tell you why your subconscious decided to hallucinate that thing that it did. So therefore, I don't care. I just don't.
Also, stay off the meth. That could
brings me to my
have
next
something
point.
to do with it. Yes.
Don't smoke crack. The third thing I don't care about is your mock draft. Okay? I don't want to sit there and listen to 32 predictions of your mock draft. I'm going to give you mine, but that's because it's quite literally my job. But I don't care about your mock draft. Why? Because the overwhelming majority of mock drafts are done by fans who are obviously going to conduct the mock draft, not only their picks, but the picks of the teams ahead of their team, so that their mock draft ends up with their team drafting the player that they want. Not the guy that will be available or the guy that makes the most sense, but the guy that they want. Earlier this week, I was perusing a couple of Carolina Panther news sites trying to conglomerate stories that we could break down on the pod. And I came across a mock draft from a cat by the name of Luke Easterling. He is a editor for DraftWire. DraftWire, I will give you, is actually a very good source. It's actually a very good source if you do pay extra attention to the National Football League draft. And I go to DraftWire quite a bit when I'm putting together my draft specials, my mock draft, etc., etc. It's a solid conglomeration of draft news from a lot of different areas. But sometimes they just go too far. Luke Easterling put up his most recent mock draft, and I went and checked it out because I was very curious. And I thought to myself, all right, the number one pick in the National Football League draft is from the abysmal Chicago Bears. The Bears were really bad this year at 3-14. They were only a half game better than the Houston Texans, but the Texans decided to forfeit the first overall draft pick in order to gain a win over Indianapolis.
There you go, Lovey.
And then immediately fire Lovie Smith for doing so. Okay? Chicago's got the first pick in the draft, and according to Luke Easterling of DraftWire.
By the way, really quick, I don't know. I'm sure they wouldn't say they fired him because he won.
No.
Because the opposite would be that they wanted him to lose, like tanking, like tanking the thing that, you know, there are lawsuits and things about. So they did. Obviously, there's no way he got fired for winning the last game. It's because the rest of the season.
They fired him because he was a token placeholder. They knew he was not the long-term coach. They did not have a guy last year they wanted to be the long-term coach. So they were able to, and I believe this, although I don't have hard evidence for it. I just don't have any reason not to believe it. They brought in Lovie Smith so that they could go, hey, look, guys, we got a black coach. That's it. Because I told you before the season started last year, Lovie Smith is there for 1 year. I guarantee it. I made one guarantee as far as coaches go at the beginning of last year, and is that it was that Lovie Smith was going to make it 1 year. They hired him to have a black coach so they could say, look at us, because their guy wasn't available. Anyway, we'll come back to that later on. In this draft from Luke Easterling, he's got the Indianapolis Colts making a trade to get into the number one overall position in the 2023 NFL draft. And who does he have the Indianapolis Colts selecting with the number one overall pick? I asked Lonzo this on the pod yesterday, so he already knows what the answer is. But I asked Lonzo who would be the number one overall pick if somebody traded with Chicago to get to the one spot, and his answer was
either Bryce Young or CJ Stroud.
Correct. The only two correct answers there. No one else is worth trading to number one. I'm not saying no one else is worth trading into the top 5 for, but there are two players worth trading up to number 1 for, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. That's it. That's the list. He has got Indianapolis trading up to number 1 and then selecting with the first overall draft pick in the 2023 NFL draft, Will Levis, the quarterback from Kentucky. Number 1 overall. By the way, a trade up to number 1 is going to require you not only to send them their first rounder this year and their first rounder next year, but probably your second rounder this year and next year to get as well, and maybe a mid-round pick somewhere else. For Will Levis out of Kentucky. He's got Houston taking Bryce Young as the number 2 overall pick. I got no problem with that. Houston is going to take whoever is not selected first, Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. They will go number 2 to the Houston Texans. He's got the Cardinals moving to number 3, taking Will Anderson, the outside linebacker and edge rusher from Alabama. No problem with that pick. He's got the Bears moving down to number 4 from Indy and taking Jalen Carter, the excellent defensive lineman out of Georgia. No problem with that pick. But where, oh, where does he have the number 5 pick going? Luke Easterling suggests that the Panthers will make a 3-way trade involving the Denver Broncos and Seattle Seahawks. Seattle has Denver's pick at number 5. He suggests that Carolina will make that trade, jump to number 5, and take Ohio State quarterback CJ Stroud. Now, The only thing that I'm going to say here, with all due respect to Luke Easterling and DraftWire, is that, ladies and gentlemen, if you see takes like this, it makes it much easier to thin out your social media feed. It makes it much easier to know where not to go. Number one, CJ Stroud is not making it to number 5. If CJ Stroud makes it to number 5, I will eat an entire can of cold Skyline chili right here on the show. All right? He ain't making it to number 5. You may write it down, tweet me reminder. I don't care.
I was gonna say, I remember that. I don't. I don't need to do that.
If CJ Stroud falls to number 5, I will eat an entire can of cold Skyline chili right here on the show. Skyline chili already gross. It being cold probably somehow makes it worse. Okay? He ain't going to 5. Second off, if he did go to 5, I would be 100% fine with Carolina moving up to 5 to get him. No problem. Am I asking Carolina to move to 1 or 2 to get CJ or Bryce Young? No. Costs too much. And even though you've got assets, you don't want to diminish the ability to add a guy to 4 or 5 other positions in order to upgrade with a prospect at 1, right? I don't want to do that. But if you can move from 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. That's Dolly Parton there. If you can jump to 5 and get CJ Stroud or Bryce Young, go bananas. But that is hilarious. That ain't happening. So if you see a mock draft like that, now you understand why I don't care about your mock drafts. I don't, because none of you know. Trey said, if CJ Stroud makes it to number 5, will you eat Vegemite? Trey, if you told me right now that my eating a can of Vegemite would solve world hunger, I would have to think about it. All right? If you told me eating a jar of Vegemite would take away poverty from planet Earth, I would have to think about it. It's that bad. All right? I went to Skyline for a reason. There's a difference between this is gross and this is biological warfare. That's Vegemite. All right, let's take a break. Got a few more things I want to get to in this hour of the radio broadcast. Another 4-star tight end is heading to USC. A 4-star tight end that had some massive scholarship offers, including from Clemson, has picked the Gamecocks. And they might add one more highly touted prospect that Clemson also has their eyes on. Ladies and gentlemen, there's something happening in Columbia. We're going to run over my 5-point checklist for success as a college football head coach in the next segment. And I will tell you why Shane has just put a big old green check into one of those boxes, and we'll do it next on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
You see.
All right, guys, got a live read. Stay right there. We will be right back. Oh, I am. Did I? Oh, I clicked mute because I took us off. That's right. You know.
Yeah. 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 I'll be researching where I can get a can of Skyline chili just in case. Here's the thing. I want it to happen. So, you know. According to sources, Frank Reich is getting a second interview with the Panthers. Is that who you want? And Diesel.
Despite their repeated efforts to prove this statement incorrect, Lonzo, bassists are people too.
Absolutely. Some of the best people I know play
They're
bass.
weird. They're all weird.
Yeah, people say that about drummers too. But I mean, you know, drummers are just violent.
I think about a bassist though, right? Like the thing about a bassist is, you know, as a bassist, unless you reach legendary status like Bonham, like Flea, right? Unless you reach legendary status,
Gene Simmons.
like even Gene Simmons is not. No, if you ask most people what instrument does Gene Simmons play, they don't know.
Paul McCartnney.
Again, if you ask most people what, well, that might be a little bit more pop knowledge. But most bass, like you go into playing bass knowing that on the band hierarchy of popularity, you are always going to be last.
I think if you're starting a band, bass player is one of the first people you look for.
Oh, 100%.
Because they carry so much. They don't get the appreciation they deserve, but they do. They carry a lot.
I have said and will repeatedly say that bassists are the most important person in the band, right? More important than the drummer, more important than the lead guitar, more important than the lead singer is the bassist. They are the foundation for everything. But they are also, when it comes to the cool factor, you don't have to like it, but it is true. When it comes to who gets the chicks in the bus after the show's over, bassist is always last. Just is what it is. That's a sick little riff, though. All right, let's get to this. Without even knowing what I'm going to say, here's the text that I got. Now, it's been split up into a lot of different parts. So I'm going to do my best to try to get them all together. But Texter says, fan, part 1. OMG, really? This show is nothing but Gamecock boat kissing. We have already heard in the first segment about U of SC big recruits. Bravo. I don't know. I got to put this whole text together. I came into like 19 different texts. Oh, how about a Clemson basketball program that got another win last night? At least try to show some bipartisan support. While we still wait for any Clemson beat reporter to make an appearance on the show, do not hit me with there are other shows that cover all Clemson all the time. The only mention of Clemson this morning from the show was, oh, trust me, if Clemson starts not, I don't know. Basically, he says, continue your show, which, let's be honest, I will still listen to.
I was going to say, you still listen just about every day.
Listen,
so, I mean,
I
you know.
respect you. If you genuinely feel like I am boating on your program and you still listen, I appreciate that. I respect that. I'm not. I sat last night in bed while the lady friend did her work in the living room and watched Clemson, Georgia Tech. In fact, I have quite a bit to say about the fact that my favorite thing about Clemson basketball right now is their interior defense, right? Clemson's interior defense last night wrecked the Ramblin' Wreck of Georgia Tech. Clemson was playing for the majority of that game.
Do you hear that?
This is me talking.
No. Do you hear that? You hear listeners just dropping off. Just dropping off.
Basketball.
Just dropping off.
Basketball. 72-51 winners last night were Clemson at home over Georgia Tech. And as I mentioned, there's a couple of guys, predominantly PJ Hall, who played some of the best interior defense I have seen in a very long time. In fact, at one point, Georgia Tech was lined up for what I was ready to be a top 10 nominee. And PJ Hall came over and threw down one of the nastiest blocks I've seen in a very long time. Clemson was playing predominantly a man-to-man against Georgia Tech because Brad Brown recognized they're just more athletic than Georgia Tech. Took advantage of that fact. We're playing a heavy man defense. Did so with without a lot of off-ball help, but it was because of the fact that every time that Georgia Tech threatened the paint, Clemson was able to collapse and dominate inside close to the rim. It was impressive. And I've been the only one. I did 2 weeks ago a segment on the fact that how hilarious is it that I heard so many people, including radio people that are big Clemson folks, lined up ready to kick Brad Brownell to the curb, ready to send him packing. And what do I hear now? Chirp, chirp. Chirp, chirp. Crickets. That's not what a cricket sounds like, but I can't make a
I was
cricket
going to say
noise,
some
so.
of those people, that's what I hear every time they speak.
Correct.
But, you know.
Here's the deal. I'm the only person that's taught Clemson basketball, right? And the only people talking Clemson basketball outside of me are not talking basketball. The only thing they have, the only topic they have is, maybe I was wrong about Brad Brownell. Because they ain't talking basketball. They're talking Brad Brownell because it's all they got.
I told you that Brad Brownell, he's as good as Dabo, and he's going to do the thing, go to the championship, and they're going to win the tournament thing, and we going to be champs. Go Tigers.
Here's what it comes down to, kids. You want basketball? I'm going to talk basketball. But you don't have to like this. I'll be real with you. I don't. College football will always come first. You have the power to change the conversation. You have the power to make other sports more prevalent on this show and others. You know what my job is? You know what my role is? It is to talk about whatever it is that gets you guys to call or light up the text line. That's it. I have taught Clemson basketball. Maybe you've heard it, maybe you haven't. I have taught Clemson shooty hoops. And I get a text, maybe 2. I bring up football. Y'all light it up. You want more basketball? Let us know. All right. Now that I've wasted this segment that I was excited about getting to, let me get to it. We have talked about the recruiting at South Carolina. Okay? Another big name has joined the ranks. 2024 4-star tight end Michael Smith out of Georgia. He's out of Savannah, Georgia. He had a list of offers that included Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Penn State. Michael Smith is rated the number 134 player in the 2024 class. He is rated the number 6 tight end across the country, according to the 24/7 Sports Composite. This guy is considered an elite prospect as of right now. Remember, this past Sunday, they picked up commitment from in-state 4-star offensive lineman Cam Pringle. Pringle, the number 1 offensive tackle in the 2024 class, the highest rated prospect to commit to the Gamecocks in the Beamer era. He is number 46 nationally. Smith, a dynamic talent at tight end, 42 receptions, 684 yards, 9 touchdowns this fall. He helped Calvary Day School in Savannah post a 12-1 record and reach the playoffs. Of course, the tight end room in South Carolina right now is Not good. Jaheim Bell is going to go down to Tallahassee and be elite for Florida State. Austin Stogner has decided to transfer back to Oklahoma. Travion Kenyon retired from football. Nate Adkins, the savior for South Carolina at tight end, has graduated. The Gamecocks have landed a trio of transfers at the position for 2023, and Trey Knox from Arkansas, Joshua Simon from Western Kentucky, and Nick Elksnis out of Florida. Only Elksnis, though, has eligibility beyond next season. So this is a big pickup at tight end, a position the Gamecocks have nothing for in 2024. They do now. That list of teams: Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Penn State. If I told you there was a kid whose top 8 included Tennessee, Ohio State, Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, and Penn State, you'd go, damn, he must be pretty good. Saban wants in, Heupel wants in, Day wants in, Sark wants in, Smart wants in, Frank wants in. It must be somebody, man. Must be somebody. He's coming to South Carolina. I mentioned my 5 steps to relevancy. Step 1, win the games you're supposed to win. Step 2, win the recruiting battles for top talent in your region. Step 3, win the games that you're not supposed to win. Step 4, win the recruiting battles outside of your region. Step 5, make the playoffs. Right? That's the order. We have talked about the fact that Shane Beamer accomplished step 1. He did lose a few games he was supposed to win. Down in Florida, against Missouri. Those are games South Carolina, frankly, had no excuse not to win, right? We all agree on that? Should have beat Florida. They were bad. Should have beat Mizzou. They were bad. Those 2 wins give you a 10-win season this year. But all the other games they were supposed to win, up to and including, by the way, Texas A&M, Kentucky, they got those dubs. So it's a half a check mark, right? You get the short part of the check mark, but not the tall part. Then you take a guy like Cam Pringle. He's a 4-star recruit. Best offensive lineman in the state of South Carolina. One of the top 6 offensive tackles nationally. Right there in the shadow of the cola in the upstate. They won that battle. A battle that Clemson was in. That is a check mark. Now, there's a couple of other guys out there. Blake Franks is a 3-star Greenville High School offensive lineman on the verge of a commitment, and he has now made it a 2-horse race. According to a report from Sports Talk SC, it is down to Clemson and South Carolina. Franks told Sports Talk SC, quote, right now they are standing out the most to me. They are definitely my top 2. It's still up in the air right now. He projects as a guard at the college level, and he is one of 3 rising senior offensive linemen across the state of South Carolina. Cam Pringle was one of them, committed to South Carolina over Clemson, Florida, Georgia, NC State, and Tennessee. That is a big grab for them. Blake Franks would be the next one. That is another big grab for them. They are keeping an eye on a couple more players. There's a couple more players that these 2 schools are still looking at. Marquis Anderson, Antonio Williams. These are all names that have been up in the air that have picked Clemson. Now, Shane is starting to get some of these guys to sway over in his direction. And don't get me wrong. The best way to get a guy that's on the fence between the 2 schools to come to your school is to beat the other school, right? South Carolina did that. They in Tennessee checked one of the boxes. That box being win the games you're not supposed to win. Once you start winning the games you're not supposed to win, then there are fewer games you're not supposed to win. But they won the games they're not supposed to win. They're winning the recruiting battle in state, and now they've won a recruiting battle out of the state. They have pulled a kid that Saban wanted. They pulled a kid that Kirby Smart wanted, and they got him to come to Columbia. You know, it's one thing, though, to go get a kid that Dabo wanted out of South Carolina and bring him to South Carolina, especially when he's closer to Columbia than Clemson. That's one thing, and it's a good thing. It is another thing to go a state away and to pull a kid that Saban wanted, and Kirby wanted, and Dabo wanted, and James Franklin wanted, and Sark wanted, right? It's another thing for Shane to win that battle versus winning a battle for Cam Pringle, an in-state guy in the shadow of Willie B. I'll ask you to be the independent observer here, Lonzo, if you want to. Am I making too much out of the fact that South Carolina is now beginning to get the elite talent from in the state to want to come there and is now going out of state to bring elite talent away from Alabama, away from Georgia, away from Penn State, away from Tennessee, away from Clemson, and get those guys too? It just feels to me like there is a change in the wind based on the recruiting success. It's got to translate to on the field, but the recruiting wins have changed.
We've said many times on this show about things being cyclical. This is cyclical. This has happened before in South Carolina. It's happening again. This should be the norm. The cycle should not be, hey, we're getting all these recruits and then suddenly we go dry for a decade. That should not be how it is, but that's what just happened due to poor coaching choices. Now you got someone in there in Shane Beamer who is getting results and everyone is fired up about him. The Gamecock fans love him. The Clemson fans hate him. Everything that you need for this area. And he was always a good recruiter. So him getting back, and he was there, if I recall, when South Carolina got all those really good recruits. So I think it's just the cycle coming back around, and this time it needs to stay there. You need to build and build and build and get South Carolina back to the winning tradition that Spurrier started and it sputtered at the end when he decided he didn't want to do it anymore.
This, you're right, for schools it is cyclical. Some cycles take longer than others. Some parts of the cycle take longer than others. But there is a shift in the changing of the winds. And recruiting is proving that. Now, to the texter who was upset about that segment, stay put. Because I'm going to talk Clemson, Georgia Tech basketball. Clemson is off to the best start in their ACC history on the hardwood. And it does need to be talked about, and it will be talked about later on in the show. When we come back, a massive change to the NBA's All-Star Game. I wonder if it makes you more or less interested. We'll find out next on the Rob Brown Show on the Fan Upstate. Lonzo, you almost strained out your Yankee trying to sound country.
Which is so funny because my mom's from Kentucky, dude. The kind of that stuff will always be in me. I'm specifically going after one fan base and one accent. That's a Pickens County accent. You've been there, you know that. It took me a couple years with my supposed Yankee mentality to figure out the one accent that I really had trouble understanding when I was screening calls when I first got to South Carolina, to the point where on the call screen, I would just guess at what they said. I had no idea what it was. And it got me chastised a few times on the air, but it was worth it. And eventually I learned how to decipher. By the way, Roger, I don't. I'm just crazy. But I fit right in radio, so, you know.
ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free at ZipRecruiter.com/radio. That's ZipRecruiter.com/radio. ZipRecruiter.com/radio.
Travis Benson, owner of CNT Foundations. With the world like it is today, we all just want to hold on to what we've earned. And if your home has a foundation problem, you can do just that with CNT Foundation. We now offer up to
So me saying I'm crazy means I'm a country fan. If you want to equate the two, I mean, Kevin, I mean, that's up to you, dude. I don't know. Or are you talking about the Kentucky thing? My mom hates country, and she's from Kentucky, so you know. I heard Motown growing up. I heard metal. I heard R&B. I heard every form of music except for country, which was shunned and banned in our household, and I consider it a tradition. So you know, some traditions are good traditions. Not having country music in your household is an excellent
It
tradition.
is not. Give me some George Strait, baby. The king.
The most lightweight, easy kind of music to do is country music.
No.
Anyone can do it.
No.
And a bunch of people can throw some fake twang in there, and there you go. That's my boy. He's awesome. There's a tear in my beer, and I'm crying for you, dear. I bet, James.
I bet I'm clipping that for after the show.
I bet that is an adventure. No, I'm talking about the one accent in South Carolina that I've had the most trouble with. Not learning how to do it, but understanding. The first couple of years screening calls, I did not understand what they were saying, and I just guessed. And I got in trouble. Russ Castle would yell at me on the air. That's not what it says on my screen. And the reason why I didn't say it on the screen is because I had no idea what they were saying. But you acclimate, you get better at your job. Listening is my job. And I was new in radio, and now I'm a lot better at understanding than I was then. What's Seth metal? I think autocorrect got you there. I don't know what Seth metal. What is Seth metal? Is that a genre I don't know, Rob? He's ignoring me, but that's fine. It's normal.
I'm assuming he meant.
You got to hear our one-sided conversations in the office where I'm just talking and He has no idea what I just said. Which is why, yes, I've been known to slip some things in here and there just to see if I can get him to. But the sad part is when he's not in the office, I'm still in there talking. Because as I pointed out earlier, I fit in radio because I'm crazy. So it autocorrected from death to Seth. Okay. And I hear Seth metal, I think, whoa. Which we might get to
Really
see
wants
what.
Seth to show up on SmackDown.
Yeah, probably not.
So I'm a big fan of gimmicks in sports. I've made that known. I like gimmicks in sports. And I'm not talking about necessarily just athletes. I'm talking about from the sports themselves. I like things that are different. I, for one, Zoe, am actually really kind of intrigued, and I will be the only one watching it. But next weekend, the Pro Bowl is a flag football game. Now, it makes me kind of feel bad for offensive linemen.
I'm not interested in the flag football game. I am interested in the skills challenge.
Absolutely.
I always love the skills challenge.
Absolutely.
When you see how accurate some quarterbacks can be and how not accurate some quarterbacks can be, it's awesome.
I love the skills challenges. The NHL's doing one this year. They've added like a slap shot challenge. It's kind of rad.
The NBA does that also.
Yep. I'm in for it, right? I like gimmicks that aren't impacting the game itself, right? Oh, so flag football. It's a Pro Bowl. Who cares, right? I'm here for fun. The NBA has decided to do a little gimmick for their All-Star game this year. Last couple of years, the NBA has had the captains, the top vote getter in the West, the top vote getter in the East, draft their team from the full pool of All-Stars.
Which is usually LeBron and somebody
Giannis.
else. Yeah.
Last, I think 2 years, it's been LeBron and Giannis. It will be LeBron and Giannis again this year. They are the top two vote getters. It is 50% fan-based, 25% media based, 25% coaches and players, right? That's where the vote tally comes from. So this year, however, instead of LeBron and Giannis drafting their teams on TV a few days before the All-Star game, Lonzo, at the All-Star game, all the players in the All-Star game will show up, not on a team, and they are going to draft the teams playground style at the game.
Yeah, that's a mistake. Is that going to be televised? I want him.
Yep.
I want him.
Yep. LeBron and
Because
Giannis.
if you're last, you're still an all-star. But if you're last, you're last.
LeBron and Giannis, instead of doing it on TV, where they still had to pick somebody last, instead of on TV, it'll be on TV, but instead of doing it over TV where it's just those two and a couple of hosts, LeBron and Giannis will do it on the floor at the All-Star game with the put like literally playground style. All right, I'll take AD. All right, I'll take Zion. All right, I'll take Jalen. All right, I'll take whoever. I'll take Luka. I kind of love that. I'm not going to lie. You know why I kind of love it? I kind of love that we are going to get to see basketball dudes playing the game that we play, the way we play it. When I go down to the Y, it's just a group of dudes. We pick teams. We play a game. We shuffle the teams. We play a game. Now they have to do the same thing. How do you develop chemistry on a team that was selected 5 minutes ago?
Does being picked first have the same impact as being picked last? That's to your ego. I know it's the opposite end, but does it?
Good question. Good question. And that's kind of interesting, right? Does a dude with a 2 getting picked last change the way that he attacks the game? Does he refuse to play? No, you picked me last, dog. I'm out. These dudes now have to play ball the way that I play ball when I go down to the rec center. You better damn sure believe I'm intrigued to see how that works out. Are you more or less interested by that? The Rob Brown Show rolls on. Hour number 3 is next right here on the Fan Upstate.
Love you know you're wrong, Kevin. In the neighborhood, always pick first. At school, somewhere in the middle of the pack. Poor James Harden. I kind of want. That's mean, but I kind of want to see James Harden just standing there, just kind of bouncing around, the beard just kind of moving a little bit. Keep looking at the ground, like, man, why ain't they picking me next? Why ain't they picking me? And then it comes down to the last pick, and yeah, I guess we'll take James. See, the thing is, Kevin, you see me as the product that I am now. You don't know what I was back in the day. Rob doesn't know what I was back in the day, just like I don't know what he was. All you get is our stories. This generation, though, it's been more documented because every phone has a camera, all the video, all the social posts. Some are actually real. You can see it all. Back in my day, we didn't even have video recorders.
There's a tear in my beer, and I'm crying for you, dear.
That was during my circle at the time. Decided to play, oh, we're country now, and they never had been. And you got subjected to the torture when you rode in someone else's vehicle. And everyone else's car was better than mine. And usually we rode in one dude who had a big Chevy van. So, and he was from Kentucky. And it was Hank Jr. Which is the equivalent, Kevin, of like someone being in high school and the other person being like in kindergarten or something. So, I mean, I don't know when the old guy transition happened for me, but there did come a point where I just don't care anymore. And I'd heard about that. And it's getting worse. Luckily, it hasn't gotten to the point where I end up losing my job over it, but you know.
Go grab my.
Run. Run. Dude, a couch in the back of that would have been fun. Especially when bumps were hit. And I bet you were a loser if you're riding on that couch and you had to bail at some point during the trip.
Had to bail.
For some reason, that just makes me think of my stepdad at the time. I was a teenager, and two of my cousins. He was like, "Why don't you just ride in the back of the U-Haul?" And it was a big U-Haul truck. You could see nothing. He hit every single bump. We were back there flying around. It was freaky, but so much fun. It should not have been that much fun. And of course, as I'm flying, I'm bracing myself because I know I'm hitting somebody. Folding chairs. Oh, that would have been a whole lot harder. But you could have had a no DQ match back there while you're driving somewhere. Yelling shotgun probably really important because you know you don't get a chair shot if you get the ride shotgun. We don't play Polka Hudson, but if you want us to, I could.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. The third, the final, the best, the money hour of the show gets its start right now. Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen. I am Rob Brown. Directly on the other side of the glass, metaphorically speaking, he, of course, is Colonel Grudge. Hashtag Dad Kicks, the Sultan of Swag, the Wizard of Wave.
There he is. There he is.
Somebody who did that to me.
You know, by the way, if you want to see where he is, you can see it on Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. Someone did that. I've done it to you a couple times since you did it.
Right, but you do it out of sarcasm. I mean,
I do. What do I not do out of sarcasm?
That's fair. Nothing at all. I played golf last weekend with a couple of buddies. It was our buddy Andrew, president of the Reedy River Riot, the Soccer Supporters Club, and a couple other guys that are in the club, one of whom I have not seen in a while, since the end of last soccer season. And he walked up. I was loading my clubs into the back of the golf cart. He walks up. I was like, "What's up, big dog?" And he goes, "There he is." I was like, "Yes."
You got to do the pointing too.
There he is.
There he is.
Finger guns make everything better. All right. Third hour of the show gets kicked off now. I asked this question earlier in the show. I'll ask it again because I put it up on the socials and have gotten a lot of response to it already. I asked the question, when you go seat yourself at a restaurant or really anywhere else that you might be seated for any length of time in public, do you do so based on like the layout of the restaurant, right? Like when I walk into a restaurant and we go to sit at the table, before I sit, I look around. All right. There's that door. There's that door. There's the bathroom. There's the entrance exit to the kitchen. There's a big window over there that somebody could come in and out of. All right. Based on that information, I'm going to sit here because I got Visual on those 3 doors. The kitchen, which is, I suspect, the least likely place trouble would come from, is behind me. If somebody comes in that door, I can go to that door. If they come in that door, I can go to that door. If they come to that door, they come in the window, I can make it over there. If I can't, I got this big thing that I can use as cover, right? Like, it's dumb, and I acknowledge it's dumb, and it might even be borderline paranoia.
Does it change according to neighborhood?
No, like the restaurant layout's the restaurant layout, right? Like if I walk into a middle of nowhere barbecue joint or a 5-star steakhouse, if they have the same shape, I'm picking the same seat, right? Like I'm not going to go to the hostess and be like, can you sit me at that table? Why? In case there's a terrorist attack, right? But whatever table she does seat us at, I'm going to have an action plan based on that table. And I thought that I was the only person that did that. But I'm getting a lot of kickback on social media from other people saying exactly the opposite, that they do it too. Diddy chimed in at Diddy33. He said, I definitely don't like my back to the door or the crowd. I like to see what's happening, but mostly because I'm obsessed with people watching and not because I need some kind of escape plan. I just like seeing other humans are fools like me.
Yeah, I know he said that, but I bet he still knows where the exits are. Come on, Diddy.
100%.
Come on.
At Barry H. Kane said, in this day and age, it's not a bad plan. You just never know. Agree with that. Clay at Capped Clay wrote in. He said, yep, and I take notice of the exits and the people in every store I go into. LOL. Yeah, so do I.
Yeah, I do that too, but usually security follows me, so at least I know I got backup. Of course, that's why they're following me, of course. It has nothing to do with the hair or anything.
Fair. At Tiger Swordfish said, I always pick a seat that I can see as many doors as possible. I do a good bit of people watching, which I know is frowned upon. And 11 out of 10 days, I have my 38 special with me.
I also listen. I'm quiet while I'm eating, and I listen. I'm not eavesdropping. If you're loud, I'm going to hear what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if you're seated at the restaurant, right? Like listen, if you're having a conversation loud enough for me to hear, it's kind of on you.
Well, kind of if you're at a restaurant.
I am incapable of not doing that.
You're not.
You know the most frustrating thing in the world was? This past, what was it, Sunday? No, Saturday night. I went out with a couple of friends and the lady friend. And I realized at the restaurant, we were having a conversation about the show in the station, right? With the lady friend. And
ain't nothing going on around here,
No,
so I
it's
don't know.
boring.
Yeah.
having a conversation about the show in the station with the lady friend. And, you know, listen, if I'm just talking about my real life, I don't really care who hears me, right? But if I'm talking about the business and the show and the station and all that, there are times, very rare, when people know who I am. So it's not necessarily the best idea for me to be sharing my personal opinions about things that are going on loud enough that people could overhear it and then turn around and go, hey, I heard Rob Brown say this, right? Might not be great for me.
Unless you're being conniving and you want people to do that sort of thing.
Sure.
Not saying anyone in this room would ever do such a thing, but you know, it is a possibility.
Sure, but I'm not that smart, right? I'm not that smart to put a plan together. I'm not Hannibal. So I had to say something to her, and I know there's people within earshot, so I lean over and I say it this way. I'm like, so here's the thing that's going on. She's like, why are you whispering? I'm not. I'm talking at a normal volume. This is not how I talk. This is a normal volume.
As I have told members of my family, stop using last names. Stop using last names.
That would work for me, except for I am known as Rob Brown.
I mean, when
One
they're
word.
when they're talking about something else that's going
I
on
gotcha.
with other people. Yeah, I'm Lonzo. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, and I really am, by the way. So I mean, that is the name that I'm called in public and at home. So I mean, you know.
All right, let's see. So there's what's coming out on tweets. Here's on the text line. Mike has texted into the show. Mike says, Rob, every man does that, but also from movies, when something goes down at a restaurant, it starts in the kitchen. They come through the back door and run through the kitchen. Keep your eyes on every possible situation. Love the show. Keep it up. Thank you, Mike.
Yeah. See, it bothered me when you said you don't worry about the kitchen, because that was my first thought too. Something going down, people come through the kitchen.
Yeah, but so as somebody who worked in restaurants a very long time, including as a waiter, so I was in the kitchen quite a bit. In most restaurants you go to, the dudes in the kitchen, how do I say this lovingly and respectfully as somebody who worked in a restaurant for a long time? A lot of the dudes in the kitchen, Lonzo, are just a tick off. You know what I mean?
Kind of like radio producers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got you.
They're just a tick off. If somebody comes through the kitchen looking for a problem, there is a line of defense, which is the dudes in the kitchen, right? There's going to be some noise before they get out onto the floor, right?
Unless, which happens a lot, someone comes to the kitchen and acts like they're supposed to be there. You're busy cooking. You're not looking up
I'm
going,
going to tell
yeah.
you as somebody who worked in a restaurant kitchen, that does not happen. It does not happen. I have seen
I've only worked at McDonald's as far as the kitchen goes. If someone comes through there, I don't care. I'm worried about putting the right amount of ketchup, the right amount.
That's fine. I have worked in restaurants. And if somebody steps foot in the kitchen that is not supposed to be there, they are going to get called on it. There is nobody that is going to walk all the way through without one of the kitchen guardians going, who the hell are you and what the bleep are you doing
Are
back
there
here?
cleavers and knives on standby just in
Oh, yeah,
case?
everywhere.
Okay, all right.
That's what I'm saying. If somebody comes, it is not like the movies. If somebody comes through the kitchen, there will be noise before they get to the dining room, right? That is the exit I'm least concerned about as somebody who's worked in that industry a long time. The front door is a much better option, right? That's the one I want eyes on the most. Texture says, fan, it's Wednesday. You know what that means.
Slap fight.
Stop. No, stop with that. Why is that a thing? I'm assuming you mean Fight Club, which of course is tomorrow.
Or they're talking about AEW tonight.
That's
probably,
true.
Probably.
Which is interesting because
that is one of their catchphrases.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers backed off, and Jay Briscoe's brother will be on Dynamite tonight wrestling Jay Lethal.
Why were they not on?
Sorry. So this is really interesting. All right. Non-wrestling story or a wrestling story. Bear with me for a second.
You don't need that. Just don't apologize for wrestling, man.
The Briscoes, for a very long time wrestling on the indies, Lonzo, had very, how do I say this? Very trashy Southern redneck characters, right? And the Briscoes were very much the everything is kayfabe type wrestlers. They did not break kayfabe.
They do look like they hang out at the Waffle House quite a bit.
I take offense to that as somebody who hangs out at the Waffle House, but I get what you're saying. All right.
There's always like a couple people in there that you're like, okay.
Right. So the Briscoes characters.
And yes, I know I probably look like that myself anyway.
Big Waffle House energy. The Briscoes characters were very xenophobic, old school, trashy Southern guys on the indies, and they lived their life in kayfabe. They lived in their character, right? If you saw the Briscoes out in public and you recognize them, they went into character. They lived it in character, and they also lived their kayfabe on social media, which led to them tweeting things in character that they wouldn't have said as people, that led to tweeting in character some not so nice things. And because a lot of people didn't know that they were doing it as characters in kayfabe, they took some real life heat for it. And Warner Brothers said, we don't want to dredge all that up, so we don't want the Briscoes on AEW. Well, Tony, who is continued to prove himself to be a huge dork, but a good guy, apparently, has donated a ton of money to the Briscoes and like pumped them up. And Warner Brothers backtracked and will allow Jay Briscoe's brother to wrestle as a celebration of life tonight on Dynamite. So I will definitely be watching that live. 2 live wrestling shows in a week for me. Actually, it's 3 because I watched last week's Dynamite because last week's Dynamite was really good too. So if you're into the wrestling, stay tuned tomorrow, 11:20. In fact, just over 24 hours from right now, it'll be Fight Club with Lonzo, and we'll catch up on all of that.
And we'll preview The pay-per-view.
Royal Rumble.
Saturday night, which Rob is going to be live tweeting.
Yes,
apparently,
indeed.
or something.
I will be live stream watch-alonging for that. Live stream watch-along, so make sure you follow me on the YouTube and the Twitch and all that. Cocky for a Reason says, I'm all about personal protection and prevention. I do the same thing. I would rather have the wall to my back and still have access to escape.
I am curious, though, is this just a guy thing? Do women do the same thing?
It's a good question.
And is this something passed down from father to son, or is it just a thing that you do?
You know what I kind of think it is? It's kind of like, and we've got our ridiculous promo going about urinal etiquette, right?
It's not ridiculous. It's a how-to.
It's factual.
Yes.
None of us we've talked about this on the air. None of us have ever been trained on the art of urinal etiquette. We just all know it, right? But
I am someone who reared a son, and we've never had that conversation.
But he knows it.
Right.
And I think a part of it is there are things that you learn by seeing, not by being told, right? I don't think any of us has ever been told urinal etiquette. I think we just walk into the bathroom, and based on what we see, we're like, okay, this is how people do this, so that's what I'm going to do. That's how this works.
None of those rules apply to a radio station bathroom, by the way.
No, there's no
None of
rules
them.
in there. It's just
Yes,
a lawless
it's-
wasteland, and I mean waste very literally.
Yes.
I think that it is one of those things that, like, my pops did specifically tell me what he was doing, but I asked him, right? I think a lot of us just watch other guys do that. You figure out why it is that when you go to the restaurant with the fam, Pops goes, I'm sitting there back to the wall. Let me sit in that chair. Why? Just let me sit in that chair. And you, over time, enough that this happens enough that you realize that, okay, he's doing that so he can see the front door. He's doing that so he's got view on the crowd. He's doing that so he knows the walls to his back, whatever. And then you pick up on that. And by that point, it's just ingrained in you. I kind of think it's like that. But I really wondered if I was the only one who did that. And you guys are blowing up the text and the Twitter telling me not the case. That a lot of y'all, based where you sit or walk in a restaurant or store, with an action plan in the back pocket.
All right. So I said this to you when we started this, that you're not the only one. Does this validate your thinking, or do you suddenly feel like, I thought I was the only one doing this. Now I'm part of a group. I mean,
I think that this is one of those things. My life thoughts and beliefs are not dictated by the life thoughts and beliefs of other people. I very much let people live and let live and do whatever they want to do. It's not my life. It's not my body. It's not my choice. I don't care. I'm going to do what I want to do, how I feel it should be done, and how I believe it should be done. And I'm not really worried about what other people do. I don't need validation on my beliefs and actions based on other people, but it does make me feel less like a psychopath.
All right. I do have another scenario. Two guys walk in, you and another guy walk in. Could it come to blows if the one guy gets the move on you and gets the spot that you want?
I think if
or
we're
do you go, all right, he's got us covered?
If we're having that unspoken debate, then I think I got to realize, like, okay, this guy's got the same idea, right? Like, I can trust this guy. He's got the same plan. He's got the same concept. Now, if I roll up and it's like me, a buddy, and his teenage son, and the like the 14-year-old kid's like, I want that chair. I'm like, I don't really care. I don't care. I don't trust you. If Pops wants it and we have the unspoken debate and he gets the chair, I'm like, all right, I'm trusting this guy. But if he doesn't, or I don't trust the guy, there will be no unspoken debate. I'm just getting the chair. This is just where I'm sitting. Y'all can sit around me. But I'm not alone, so I feel better about that. That's what I was curious to. All right. Let me know your thoughts at The Rob Brown Show on Twitter, at The Rob Brown Show, at Lonzo on Word, at The Fan Upstate is the whole station Twitter page. Blow that up with your thoughts. Text us 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN, F-A-N. We'll read them on the air. Mentioned on the way out, that last segment. I'm just going to say this, and then we'll let it go because I got a few more things I want to get into before the end of the show. Zoe, the All-Star gimmick for the NBA All-Star Game. Instead of doing it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 days out on TV without the players there, this year we are going playground style. The whole NBA All-Star pool will be on the floor together. The teams will be picked right before the All-Star game. You get picked to LeBron's or Giannis's team. You get your jersey. You get out there and play. Does that make you more or less likely to watch the game, or do you not care?
I usually tune in for the 3-point anyway.
Yeah.
So, but this
is just the game. The
Yeah.
skills contests are individual contests.
just for the game. The game I usually don't, I will watch sometimes depending on what day it is, but I haven't been as excited for it lately. I now want to see who gets picked last
I kind of do too.
and see how they handle it. And will there be? I'm guessing there's gonna be music playing the whole time they're picking
I'm
and
sure
all
it's
that
going to be
kind
a
of
whole
stuff.
production, a whole show.
I hope it's a live band because that makes it even better. And I
think
wish
it's-
whoever's on the mic for the live band or DJ, whoever calls out the guy who's last.
Mr. Irrelevant. I had to tell you, I would be intrigued to be the in-arena MC for that event, right? Like you're standing between Giannis and Braun. You're standing between Giannis and Braun. They're picking their guys back and forth, and you're introducing them. With the first overall pick, LeBron picks Luka Doncic. Dallas, Luka. Make your way on over to the team, LeBron.
By the way, he said pick. I just want everyone to know that he said pick.
What did it sound like I said?
I'm not saying. You can add a letter in there.
Cool. Some people feel that way. I don't.
Well, they may be thinking about that, whoever got picked. But
Fair
yeah,
enough.
yeah, they may be thinking that.
All right.
Do you slip, if you're an NBA guy, do you go, LeBron, what do I got to do for you to make sure I'm not last? What do you, are you,
Sitting on the side. LeBron ain't worried.
Le-
Like, what are you
no,
going to do?
no, LeBron doesn't need money. There's just
LeBron, I'll let you get 40 next time we D up.
there you go. That's different.
Let's take a break. When we come back here in just a minute, we have talked about the Carolina Panther head coaching search. Where do we stand right now? I have got a list of the interviews that have been conducted in totality. We are starting to see second round interviews be conducted by the Panthers, but I have put together a checklist. I'm big on checklist right now. A checklist of qualities, of assets, of experience that I want in the next Panthers head coach. I'm going to give you that list, and then we'll see which of the candidates check off the most boxes. We'll see if any of them jump out at you after it's over. That's next on the Rob Brown Show in the Fan Upstate.
By the something
There
of
you go, Joey B stepping up and answering.
by the something of my thumb, something wicked this way comes. Do you not know the saying? Because that's what you said.
Did I say pick with an R in there?
Yes, you did.
Okay.
Which is
Cool.
a totally different thing.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Kiss of death. By the way, it smells like boiled noodles in butter in the hall. You know, if you ever just like boiled noodles and just put some butter in there and just ate it that way? That's what it smells like in the hallway. I know it's specific, but that's what it smells like.
Courtney has told me many times that She grew up eating noodles and butter.
I thought everyone did that. Well, poor people definitely do it.
Us 1%ers.
Yeah, that could be what it is.
All of my noodles were French pasta. Like French dishes.
They were al dente.
Right.
It definitely has a smell to it. It does. To me, it's just as distinctive as popcorn. Not only do I smell it, I know from where it came from, because it's stronger. It's from the newsroom. So someone in the newsroom I know there may be possibly a thing in there that you could heat stuff with, and that's where the smell came from. I don't think Squire Tim would be eating boiled noodles. So that narrows it down to Rob or Matthew.
Betwixt the two, the only one that I have seen preparing hot food in this building is Matthew.
Yeah, true.
But
I'm
you're
going.
leaving Lee out of it as a possibility.
I think Lee's already gone. So I'm going.
I usually see him taking bathroom breaks around now.
I'm going for Rob here. Yeah, Lee's gone. So it's
Okay.
I'm gonna go find out at 12, just because I'm nosy, and I want to see if I'm right or not. Really, that's what it comes down to. I want to see if I'm right.
Offsides with Mark Ryan.
The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate. I am Rob. He is the great one, Lonzo. We'd love to have you on the broadcast at 844-FAN-PHONE, 844-326-3663, or shoot us a text at 71307. Start your text with FAN, F-A-N, FAN, F-A-N, and we will read them on the air.
Also real quick, come on to Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, or YouTube and be a part of the Armada. There are conversations going on there that's not just Rob and I, it's listeners talking to each other.
Yes, indeed.
It's pretty cool.
Yes, indeed. A lot of conversation. We've had some wrestling talk on there. We have had some restaurant action plan conversation on there. We've had the conversation of which golf club would be best in a one-on-one fight, or which golf club will be best as a weapon in a zombie apocalypse on there. I mean, you can't beat the stream. It's everything about the show and ever so much more. Facebook.com/TheFanUpstate, Twitter.com/TheFanUpstate, or search and subscribe to The Rob Brown Show on YouTube or Twitch and interact with Lonzo and I and other members of the Rob Brown Armada, should you elect to do so. So we mentioned last night's game, Clemson and Georgia Tech. And Clemson gets a 72-51 win at home. That moves them to 17-4 overall. It moves them to 9-1 in conference. Their only loss, a road loss at a decent Wake Forest team last week. It is also the best start in the Atlantic Coast Conference history of the Clemson Tigers. Now, there's two aspects of the conversation. Number one, what's happening on the court. Number two, what's happening with the coaching staff. As I have mentioned, There's a lot of folks right now that the extent of their Clemson basketball discussion is going to be, oops, maybe we were wrong about Brad Brownell. That is typically reserved for people who are not watching the basketball games and therefore do not have any talk about basketball. You know, the game of basketball. We can make that conversation very short, very sweet. You were wrong about Brad Brownell. You were wrong about him. Some of you own it. Some of you don't. You guys were ready to give up on the guy. Now, this is 1 year versus all the years in the past.
Yeah, Frank Martin had one good year too,
Yes.
where he got the Gamecocks to the Final Four.
Yep. But he then had a bunch of years where he didn't do that.
He didn't have as many years preceding the good year like Brad Brownell has. It seems like every year that's the thing you hear. Why is he still there? Why is he
Sure.
still there? Why is he still there?
The answer is because the Clemson athletic department believed in growth under Brad Brownell, that Brad Brownell was in the process of putting something together. And again, there's a lot of basketball left to be played this year, but it's 17-4, 9-1 in conference, their best start ever in ACC play. I think it's fair at this point to say that those of you who were ready to pull the trigger and move on from Brad Brownell after last year were wrong. You were wrong. Now, the basketball team itself, let's talk about what's happening on the floor. Last night, Clemson showed me a couple of things. Number one, I found it very interesting that Clemson played predominantly against Georgia Tech man-to-man. They elected to do so because while Clemson will play a lot of man-to-man, last night, the fact that they never really switched out of it, I think predominantly was because of the fact that Brad Brownell, and he can say this now, looked at this Clemson team and said, hey, we just got more talent than they do, right? We're just a better basketball team. And if I've just got more talent on the floor and I've got guys that can go a full 36 minutes like Dylan Hunter did last night, I got guys that can go a full 37 minutes like Brevin Galloway did last night. I don't really have to worry all that much about depth, right? I got guys that can go 37, 36, 38 minutes off the get. I can rely on that. I can allow their ability to stay competitive for that long to not have to go to the bench. But when I do go to the bench, I've got guys like Chauncey Wiggins that can step up, give me 18 minutes, put in 12 on 5 of 7 from the floor and 2 of 3 from the arc. I got that guy I can lean on. Now, why is Clemson at 17-4 and 9-1 sitting all the way down at 24? The answer is very simple. The 60-58 loss on the road at South Carolina in game 2 of the regular season, despite the fact that it was only game 2 of the regular season, is a bad loss. South Carolina being bad at basketball this year, despite having Gigi Jackson, is a big net loss, right? Wins over Cal, Penn State, Wake Forest, Towson, Richmond. These are all good wins. The 2 losses against South Carolina and against Loyola Chicago are bad. The loss against the top 25 team in Iowa is not a bad loss. And it was a 3-point loss. It was a hell of a game. I watched that one live. Hell of a game. Losing to a top 25 team is not going to have the net effect that a loss to South Carolina does and that a loss to Loyola Chicago. Hell, even the loss to Wake Forest, a 10-point loss on the road, by the way. The gains that you get from knocking off number 24 Duke, you still have a net loss with the L to South Carolina and the L to Loyola Chicago. That's college basketball. It just is what it is. Those 2 net losses have to be overcome. Now, here's what's left on the ACC slate for Clemson. This Saturday, they are on the road at Florida State. Florida State's bad, right? You want to talk about, I feel awful for Leonard Hamilton. Florida State was a Final Four team the year COVID canceled the tournament. They had 4 NBA players and I think 2 lottery picks on that team. That was the Final Four team for FSU. Florida State has not recovered since that year. It's a bummer. Boston College is bad. The next game that matters is on February 4th when you take on Miami. Miami went into Tallahassee last night, knocked off Florida State. It was the first time in the last 9 trips to Tallahassee that the Canes got the better of FSU. Miami has been a very respectable ACC competitor under the last couple of years. Miami is a top 20 team right now. They are sitting at number 20. Miami, why is Miami sitting at number 20? Why is Miami ranked ahead of Clemson right now with an identical record and being third in the ACC while Clemson leads it, but Miami's ranked higher? Because the L's Clemson has put down just aren't as bad. They have a loss to Maryland. That game was at home. Maryland just got a win over Ohio State 3 days ago. It's the first time they beat Ohio State in like 20 tries, right? Maryland's a good basketball team. That is not a net loss like South Carolina is. They lost to Georgia Tech. That was in Atlanta, 76-70. It's a bad loss. It's not South Carolina bad. It's not Loyola Chicago bad. They lost at NC State by a deuce. They lost at Duke 68-66. The net number of those L's for Miami is just not as atrocious as the net L's for Clemson. And college basketball, maybe even more than football, bad losses hurt you worse than good wins help you. That's why Clemson's in the hole they're in. Now, the good news is, after that Miami game, they're on the road at North Carolina. North Carolina, for the first time in as long as I can remember, is not ranked right now. They've got Armando Bacot, who's playing good basketball outside of the injury he sustained, but he is back and he's playing good ball. But North Carolina's not the North Carolina of old. Clemson's got to go into Chapel Hill and win that game. Then they get a second crack at FSU on February 15th. 3 days later, they're at Louisville. Kentucky basketball, and I don't mean the Wildcats, I mean the state of Kentucky right now. For a basketball-first state, basketball in Kentucky is crap right now. Louisville has to be a win. There are 2 ranked games remaining for Clemson right now. At home against Miami on February 4th, and then on the road February 28th at number 7 Virginia. If you want to get a better ranking. By the way, the key right now for me is, for Clemson, you are good enough and have proven now that you're good enough to win the regular season title in conference. Earn that number 1 seed in the ACC. Get yourself 2 rounds worth of buys in the ACC tournament. Why? Because it means that you're going to be set up against the better talent on fresher legs at the end to make a run at an ACC title and a much higher conference seed. The problem for Clemson right now is, despite leading the ACC at this point, if the tournament started today, they're going in as an 8 or a 9 seed because of those 2 bad losses. Not the conference loss against Wake, not the loss against top 25 Iowa, but the losses against an atrocious South Carolina team and the loss against an atrocious Loyola Chicago team have bumped you from where you should be at probably a 2-3 seed down to an 8-9 seed if the tournament started today. But there is time to turn it around. And the one question mark that has to be answered, the one thing that I think gives Clemson the second half scaries, is that the key criticism of Brad Brownell has been what? Lack of consistency. Clemson will look really good for flashes, and then for some reason it just gets turned off. If you want to climb higher up in the bracket, if you want to turn that 8-9 seed into a 2-3 seed, hell, maybe even, let's pipe dream, why not? It's fun, a 1 seed going into the tournament to give yourself a chance to make a run. There are 2 opportunities left on the table for you to do that. Versus number 20 Miami on February 4th, assuming they don't melt down. And then against the team that will not melt down, the Virginia Cavaliers on the road, February 28th. The thing I love about having those two games spread out with UNC, Florida State, Louisville, Syracuse, and NC State between them is that if you can walk through these games and pick up those wins, if you can walk through and pick up those wins, the ones you're supposed to, UNC, FSU, Louisville, Syracuse, NC State, and then you can snipe either number 20 Miami or maybe more importantly on the road, number 7 Virginia, Clemson basketball will be seen as legit by the people that matter. Because of the results of the last couple of seasons. And again, Clemson kind of got screwed by COVID too. Remember, I was sitting right here. I had been here for about a week and a half, not even. 4 days at this point. When we carried Clemson basketball, we were set to go live with Clemson basketball taking on Florida State in the ACC tournament for a trophy, right? For a trophy. That game was literally minutes from tip when the ACC canceled that game due to COVID. That was the beginning of the end for sports in our COVID year. The ACC tournament, Clemson, Florida State. I was sitting in that chair. We had it on the old TV right there. We were going to go live. I was going to go live on our social, watching and commenting on that game because it was when I was in the 12-3 spot, and it was going to preempt our show. COVID happened. Clemson had, I think, a chance. I think Florida State won that game, but had a chance to upset Florida State, and it would have made a hell of a lot of noise in the world of college basketball. Clemson got screwed by that. They were not able to get it turned around since then. It has not been great. And so basketball getting ready for the tournament, again, more than football, the folks who put together the brackets, they will never admit this, but they lean on the historicity of your program, the legacy of your program, and recent success of your program as a factor, right? If there are two teams vying for a 1 seed and one of them is a blue blood program and the other is an upstart out of nowhere team, they're always going to go with the blue blood as the 1 seed. You have sustained success. Clemson has not sustained success. So you've got a bigger hill to climb sitting here at this point, leading the ACC at 9-1, than say a 7-3 University of North Carolina team that's 15-6 overall and a full 2 games back of Clemson in conference. A team that, by the way, and as we have mentioned, you have another crack at coming up on February 11th in their house. There is only one game against UNC on the schedule for the Tigers. It is that 2-11 matchup. You are going to have a tougher hill to climb to make yourself recognized as a higher seed, despite a 2-game lead that North Carolina is, because UNC is going to lean on legacy. Clemson does not have one to lean on. They only have, we're kicking everybody's ass right now. Hunter Tyson's giving you 15.5 in a game. Chase Hunter is giving you 14 a game and almost 5 assists. You've got multiple players that are giving you upwards of 27 minutes a game. Productive 27 minutes a game. Clemson's only key right now is consistency. Can you finish this way? Going down to Florida State this Saturday, you better kick the hell out of FSU. All right? They suck. They're bad. You got to beat that team. You got to win on the road at Boston College on January 31st. You got to win at Louisville on 2/18. You got to win at Syracuse 2/22. Syracuse did give UNC a hell of a game last night, but you got to win at against Syracuse at home. You got to win on the road at NC State, and the games that are going to determine your future. At home on February 4th against Miami. On the road February 11th against North Carolina. On the road February 28th at Virginia. Back home March 4th to end your season against Notre Dame. If you take 3 of those 4 and then win all the other ones you're supposed to, Clemson's going to be a 2 seed. But everybody's going to look at you right now and say, can you be consistent? Can you finish like you started? If the answer is yes, Clemson's going to get their notoriety. But if they drop 2 or 3 of those stupid games, right? If they drop 2 or 3 out of FSU, Louisville, FSU twice, Louisville, Syracuse, NC State. You drop 2 or 3 of those, you're going to be on the fringe and you're going to be looking at a 12, 13 seed and a much tougher road to the Final Four. And by the way, I do have to say thank you because the texter who got on my backside earlier for not doing enough Clemson did text the show and said, thank you for the Clemson talk, Rob. Love the show again. You're welcome. I told you. I have nothing but good things to say about the Clemson basketball program. And I'm pretty comfortable saying this. I don't know for a fact, but I am relatively sure I am the only sports talk radio show in the upstate that did not absolutely dump on Clemson basketball. I have not called for Brad Brownell's firing. I said that I was turning my eyes towards it. Never called for his firing. Therefore, I'm the only one that can talk basketball and not just go, Brad Brownell. Let's talk basketball. Because this Clemson team makes me want to talk basketball. Not coaching drama, not personnel drama, freaking basketball. Let's take a break. We'll come back, wrap this bad boy up with a little Twitter trending topics on the way out the door. The Rob Brown Show rolls on. This is the Fan Upstate.
Last night, 72-51, the final over Georgia Tech. PJ Hall with 17 points and 7 rebounds. On the Big South schedule tonight, Campbell visits High Point. Winthrop at home against Charleston Southern. South Carolina Upstate heads to Gardner-Webb. UNC Asheville home against Presbyterian. In the SEC, South Carolina heads to Florida. Hear every play of the NFL playoffs, including the Super Bowl, exclusively on the Fan Upstate. Download the Odyssey app and search the Fan Upstate and listen anywhere on your phone. I'm Chuck Sanders. That's the Sports Flash of the Fan Upstate. I'm Patrick Quinn.
One thing I hate about camera placement on the stream is it looks like I'm rolling my eyes a lot when I'm just looking at the screens up there.
That's a lie. He is.
Because I keep catching myself looking like I'm rolling my eyes
Actually,
when I know I'm just looking up there at
I'm
the
glad
screen.
you said that. I meant to ask you that. Do you want it moved here? I can move it up here. Like we can put it here.
I can move it wherever. I like it where it is.
Okay. You just said the one thing you don't like. So.
Yeah, I'm not going to be completely pleased with any place because I'm still on the camera. So I'm not going to be happy with something.
You want off?
I'll just put myself back on. I'm logged in too, mister.
Joey B said the opportunity at a 2 seed is for Clemson to pull the double and win the regular season and conference tournament. I honestly, you're going to have to win the ACC conference tournament to be a 2 seed. I agree with that. Question is, Joey B, can you get to where winning the conference tournament makes you a 2 seed as opposed to where you're winning the conference tournament to be a 4 or a 5 or a 6? Or to where you enter the conference tournament knowing that a single L in the tournament bumps you down to a 9 or a 10. Steven, welcome in, buddy. Good to have you. Good to have you. As always.
I don't know. Shouldn't there be a penalty for being tardy? Or is it better late than never?
If you're in business, this has been a bumpy ride. From pandemic to inflation, I'm sure you could use a break. If your business has 5 or more employees and survived COVID, you might be eligible to receive a payroll tax refund up to $26,000 per employee. The challenge is getting your hands on it. Hi, I'm Howard Mackler, and that's why I founded GetRefunds.com to cut the red tape and get you the money. A team of tax attorneys
they put together a highly trained, well-known payroll program. Do all the work. Charge not a dime up front. They simply share a percentage of the cash that we get from you. Businesses of all types can qualify, including those that took PPP, nonprofits, and even those that have increases in sales. We have helped return over $1 billion to businesses, and we can help you too. Just go to Get
So there's this mod on Skyrim that I've tried to play a couple of times, but always glitched. I never got all the way through it. I got through it yesterday and was like, oh, okay, that's it. But at the end, you find out this character is actually a legacy Dragonborn, and she can also shout. The problem is when she shouts, all my other companions, because I have multiple, want to fight her. So it turns into being a free-for-all every single time.
Just a
They're
brawl.
fighting each other while there's a bunch of other people around that they need to be fighting. It's kind of fun to watch, but at the same time, it's like, stop doing that.
I have 2 Skyrim games going, although I've switched over to No Man's Sky predominantly. I have 2 Skyrim games going. One of them is my real game, no mods. One of them is my modded game. My favorite mod I found so far is the Exploding Chicken mod. As a spell, I can create as many chickens as I want. I think up to 50, who just follow me everywhere I go. And if anyone attacks me, anyone or anything attacks me, my chicken army will swarm them. And as soon as the chicken touches the target, it just explodes for a ridiculous amount of damage. So now my favorite thing is to spawn an army of 50 chickens, run through the woods looking for bandits to attack me, to then just watch my chicken army wreak havoc. It's amazing.
All right, time for Twitter trending topics where I tell Rob what's trending and he will tell us why. There was one that I kept skipping over, and it's Rapey McForehead because, I mean,
It's
yeah,
what?
Rapey McForehead. It's political, so I didn't really want to go that way. But
For
it's
the first time in a very long time, I am very, very happy by the ability to look at you and say, I have no idea what the hell you're talking about.
which is good, because we're not using that as a topic. I just was pointing that
I can't
out.
imagine why.
Okay, the first thing that's trending is GoldenEye.
So I believe there's a remastered edition of GoldenEye that's about to be released. And here's what I'm going to tell you. And I say this sincerely. GoldenEye was the first great multiplayer first-person shooter game. It was on Nintendo 64. It was a James Bond game. And it featured what I think is the most important multiplayer game that has been released on any console. There have been others that have been transcendent. Halo's multiplayer was transcendent in that it was the first time on a contemporary modern game that you got a 4-screen 16-player experience. But the way that N64 presented its first multiplayer split-screen first-person shooter, I think was the most important one that's ever been released. I don't know what platform they're releasing it on. I don't know if they're remastering it and creating it with normal, like current contemporary graphics or whatnot, but I will spend any amount of money to get it because it was also a game, Zoe, that everybody liked.
You, like me, are not going to have to spend money to play it
Game
in 2 days.
Pass!
It is on Game Pass on the 27th.
Yo, you know what I loved about GoldenEye predominantly was that there wasn't any reason that anybody couldn't get into it, right? If you like James Bond movies, it was good for you. If you liked action adventure, it was good for you. Like first-person shooter, it was good for you. If you like tacticals, it was good for you. GoldenEye, anybody could learn it. Anybody could play it. Most importantly, we could all play it together. GoldenEye, if you asked me to put together a list of the most important video games of all time, GoldenEye gets a spot on that list.
All right, the next thing is trending is Chris Olave.
Chris Olave is going to be one of the NFL's Rookie of the Year nominees, and I think he should be. I think Chris Olave, despite all the chaos down in the NOLA this year, Chris Olave was arguably the best freshman wide receiver in the National Football League. There are, I don't think, any rookie quarterbacks that would have stepped up to threaten that role from him. Chris Olave is or should be your NFL Rookie of the Year.
There is a rookie quarterback that's being mentioned. There's a rookie quarterback who's still playing right now.
No. I'm not disagreeing with
Okay.
that.
All right.
But like if I went all the way across the board, rookie of the year, I would say, let me think. Sauce Gardner's on that list. I have not pulled it up. I'm doing it off the top of my head. Sauce Gardner's on that list. Aiden Hutchinson's on that list. Chris Olave's on that list. Garrett Wilson's on that list.
I believe so, but they have offensive and defensive player of the year now, right? For rookies, I think they do. Or is it just straight
I
up
think it's
rookie?
just straight up rookie of the year.
I think Chris Olave should get it, but Brock Purdy will probably get it.
No, because he was only playing for less than half of the season.
It
This is
depends.
a start to bottom.
No,
award.
I agree. But who does the voting? See, that's the thing. That's the thing. That is the thing.
I don't know the answer.
All right. The final thing trending is NFL MVP.
So the NFL MVP candidates have been announced as well. And if I'm not wrong, and I haven't pulled up this list either, they're all quarterbacks, aren't they?
I believe there may be one that's not.
Justin Jefferson. 4 quarterbacks alongside Justin Jefferson. Josh Allen, Joe Burrow, Jalen Hurts, Justin Jefferson, and Patrick Mahomes. Who's your winner right now?
Come on.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Ladies and gentlemen, that is it for the day. Hope you had a good time. Coming up tomorrow on the show, Rashad Beard of the Panther Nation podcast joins us in the first hour. In the last hour, Lonzo walks us through Fight Club, where we catch you up on all things combat sports. We'll do a better job tomorrow. It'll be tough, but we'll pull it off. He's the great Malonzo. My name is Rob Brown. You guys are incredibly human beings, and I appreciate you being part of the Armada here on the Rob Brown Show and the Fan Upstate. Later, brother. All right, dudes and dudettes, you're all amazing people, and I very much appreciate you being a part of the show. We will see you back here tomorrow. Have a good day.
We out, yo.
Bye-bye.